Hey there, and welcome to Crime for Sleep. I know you're having trouble falling asleep, so let me keep you company with true crime stories from around the world. Before we dive in, I'm curious, where did you first hear this one? If you enjoy these stories, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Now get comfortable, and let's get into tonight's case. Crime 1, I always double-check the windows, every night without fail. I even tested this one yesterday, latched tight, sealed. But this morning it was open by 2 inches. The screen had a small tear near the corner. On the sill, a smear of something dark and greasy. And right beside it, a single coin standing upright, perfectly balanced. I didn't touch it, I just closed the window again. But now I hear a light tapping on the glass. Same spot, same rhythm. The house had belonged to my aunt before she passed. I inherited it along with her obsession for security systems and triple-locked doors. She used to say someone was watching her, following her movements through the neighborhood. The family dismissed it as paranoia from old age. I dismissed it too, until I found her journal hidden behind loose floorboards in the basement. The entry spoke of a man who appeared at her window on certain nights, always the same window, always leaving something behind. She described the coins, the greasy residue, the methodical tapping. Her handwriting grew shakier with each entry, but her observations remained precise. Dates, weather conditions, the exact position of objects he left behind. She had been documenting everything. I started my own documentation after the 3rd incident. The window would be secure when I checked it before bed, then opened by morning. Always the same 2-inch gap, always the torn screen, always the coin standing impossibly upright on the narrow sill. I tried staying awake, watching from across the room. Nothing happened those nights. The window remained closed, but my exhaustion would eventually win, and I'd wake to find it open again. The neighbors knew nothing useful. The elderly woman next door mentioned seeing someone walking through the backyard late at night, but her descriptions varied each time we spoke. Sometimes it was a tall figure in dark clothing. Other times, a shorter person wearing light colors. She couldn't remember faces, only movements that seemed too deliberate for a casual passerby. I installed a motion sensor camera facing the window. The footage showed only static during the crucial hours, as if something interfered with the signal. The timestamp would jump forward, skipping over the period when the intrusion must have occurred. I tried different cameras, different angles, same result. The technology that should have provided answers only deepened the mystery. The coins became my focus. I collected them without disturbing their positions, carefully documenting where each one stood. They were all different denominations, different years, but shared one characteristic: they had been handled extensively. The metal showed where patterns consistent with nervous fidgeting, the kind of marks left by someone who carries the same coin for months, rolling it between their fingers during moments of stress or concentration. A local collector examined them for me. He pointed out scratches and dents that formed patterns almost like a code, but when I asked him to decode it, he grew uncomfortable. He said the marks reminded him of something he'd seen before in connection with a case that had never been solved. He wouldn't elaborate, just handed the coins back and suggested I contact the authorities. The detective who took my statement was polite but skeptical. Break-ins that resulted in nothing stolen and no property damage didn't typically receive priority attention. He promised to increase patrols in the area, but I could see in his expression that he considered this a low-level disturbance at best. He did, however, recognize my aunt's name when I mentioned her. His demeanor shifted slightly. He asked if I had access to her personal effects. My aunt's journal contained more than observations about her mysterious visitor. Tucked between pages were newspaper clippings about missing persons, all from the surrounding area, all from the past several years. She had circled certain details in red ink, physical descriptions, last known locations, personal habits. The connections weren't immediately obvious, but patterns emerged as I studied them more carefully. Each missing person had lived alone. Each had reported unusual activity around their homes in the weeks before they disappeared. Several had mentioned finding objects left on windowsills or doorsteps. The police reports, when I managed to access them through a friend who worked in records, showed that these details had been noted but not followed up extensively. Missing adults who left no signs of struggle were often classified as voluntary departures. I began visiting the locations where these people had lived. Most of the houses were now occupied by new families, but I found one that remained empty. The windows showed the same scratches around the latches that I'd noticed in my aunt's house, the same type of residue on the sills. In the overgrown backyard, I discovered a small pile of coins buried under fallen leaves. They formed a perfect circle, each one standing upright despite months of weather exposure. The pattern became clear. My mysterious visitor had been active for years, moving from house to house, always targeting people who lived alone, always following the same ritual. The coins weren't random objects left behind by accident. They were markers, signals of some kind, but signals for what or for whom remained unclear. I started sleeping in different rooms, changing my routine, hoping to break whatever cycle had trapped my aunt in this situation. But the tapping continued, always at the same window, always with the same patient persistence. I could feel eyes watching me during the daylight hours, could sense movement in my peripheral vision that disappeared when I turned to look directly. The final piece came from an unexpected source. A woman called me after seeing a notice I'd posted online about the coins and the missing persons. She had worked as a social worker for decades and remembered a case involving a man who collected personal objects from people he was stalking. He would leave tokens at their homes, marking them for future visits. When confronted, he claimed he was protecting them from something worse that was coming. He had been institutionalized after his arrest, but had been released on a technicality several years ago. His treatment records, she said, showed an obsession with preventing harm to others through elaborate warning systems. He believed that by leaving markers and maintaining surveillance, he could alert his targets to dangerous situations before they occurred. The line between protection and harassment had become completely blurred in his mind. She gave me his name, but when I searched for current information, I found only a death certificate dated 6 months ago. Natural causes, no surviving family, no forwarding address for personal effects. The timeline didn't match. If he had died months before my incidents began, someone else was continuing his work, or someone was using his methods for entirely different purposes. The tapping at my window stopped 3 nights ago. No more coins, no more open latches, no more greasy residue on the sill. But yesterday I noticed a woman walking slowly past my house, pausing to look up at that same window. She carried a small bag and moved with the deliberate pace of someone conducting surveillance. When our eyes met across the yard, she didn't look away or pretend to be doing something else. She just stood there, watching me watch her. I haven't seen her since, but I found something new this morning. Not on my windowsill, but on the sill of the house across the street. A single coin standing upright, catching the early light. The pattern hasn't ended. It has simply moved on to the next target, and I can't decide if I should warn them, or if warning them would make me part of whatever system has been operating in this neighborhood for years. The journal entries continue, but now they're mine. I write down everything I observe, every detail that might matter to whoever comes after me, because I understand now that this isn't something that ends with a single person's discovery or intervention. It's something that perpetuates itself, drawing new participants into its rhythm whether they choose to be involved or not. The question that keeps me awake isn't who was at my window, or why they chose my house, or what they wanted from me. The question is whether I'm becoming the next person to carry on this work, driven by the same compulsion to document and warn and protect that consumed my aunt and possibly many others before her. Tonight I'll check all my windows before bed, just as I always do, but I'll also watch the house across the street, waiting to see if someone approaches that coin I noticed this morning. And if they do, I'll have to decide whether to intervene, to call out a warning, or to simply add another entry to this journal that I hope someone else will find useful someday. Crime 2, I found the photograph wedged between the pages of a book I'd never seen before. It was sitting on my kitchen table when I came home from work, spine cracked, pages yellowed with age. The photo showed a woman I didn't recognize, but her smile felt familiar in a way that made my stomach turn. She was standing in front of a house that looked exactly like mine, down to the chipped paint on the front door and the crooked mailbox. But I'd lived here for 3 years, and I'd never seen her before. The book belonged to my neighbor, according to the name written in faded ink on the first page. I'd spoken to her maybe twice since moving in, polite exchanges about the weather, complaints about the mail delivery. She seemed ordinary enough, the kind of person you forget about the moment they walk away. But now I couldn't stop thinking about why her book was in my house, and why that photograph felt like a punch to the gut. I knocked on her door that evening. She answered with flour on her hands and an apron tied around her waist, looking every bit the part of a harmless elderly woman. When I showed her the book, something flickered across her face, too quick to catch, but there nonetheless. "Oh, that old thing," she said, wiping her hands on her apron. "I must have left it when I borrowed some sugar last week. You don't remember, we had such a lovely chat." I didn't remember lending her sugar. I didn't remember her being in my house at all. But I nodded anyway, because what else do you do when someone fills in blanks in your memory with such confidence? The photograph stayed with me. I found myself staring at it during my lunch breaks, studying the woman's face, the way she held her purse, the shadow falling across the front steps. There was something about the quality of light that bothered me. It looked wrong for the season, too warm for what should have been winter based on the bare trees in the background. I started paying attention to my neighbor after that. She kept strange hours, leaving her house in the middle of the night with a small suitcase, returning before dawn. Her curtains were always drawn, but sometimes I could see the glow of a television screen through the thin fabric. Always the same program, it seemed, the sound of a news anchor's voice drifting through her open windows on warm evenings. The woman in the photograph haunted me. I found myself checking local missing person reports, scrolling through social media pages looking for any trace of her. The search led me to a police report from several years ago, a woman who'd vanished from her home without a trace. No signs of struggle, no note, no explanation, just gone. The photograph accompanying the report was grainy, but the resemblance was unmistakable. I printed the report and studied it until my eyes burned. The missing woman had lived 2 houses down from where I now lived. She'd been a teacher, well liked by her students and colleagues. The investigation had gone cold after a few months, the case file gathering dust in some forgotten corner of the police station. My neighbor was working in her garden when I approached her with the printout. She looked up from her roses, shears in hand, and smiled that same benign smile. "Such a terrible thing," she said when I showed her the report. "I remember when it happened. The police came around asking questions, but nobody knew anything. She was such a quiet woman, kept to herself mostly." But there was something in the way she said it, a practiced quality to her words that made me think she'd told this story before, many times before. I started keeping a journal, documenting the small inconsistencies I noticed. The way my neighbor always seemed to know when I was coming home, appearing at her window just as I pulled into my driveway. The packages that arrived at her house weekly, always the same size, always handled with unusual care. The smell that drifted from her basement window on certain evenings, something sweet and chemical that made me dizzy if I stood too close. The breaking point came when I found another photograph. This one was tucked under my windshield wiper as if someone had placed it there while I was at work. It showed the same woman, but this time she was inside a house. The wallpaper was familiar. I'd seen it somewhere before but couldn't place where. She wasn't smiling in this one. Her eyes were wide with what looked like fear. I confronted my neighbor that night, marching across the lawn with both photographs in my hand. She answered the door in her nightgown, looking smaller and more fragile than I'd ever seen her. "I think you know more about this woman than you're telling me," I said, holding up the photographs. She invited me in for tea, her movements slow and deliberate as she filled the kettle and arranged cups on a tray. The inside of her house was exactly what I'd expected: doilies and old furniture, the smell of lavender and something else I couldn't identify. But the basement door was locked with 3 separate deadbolts, and there were scratches around the locks, as if someone had tried to claw their way out. "She was my tenant," my neighbor said finally, settling into her chair with a cup of tea cradled in her hands. "Rented the basement apartment. Such a sweet girl, but troubled. Always talking about leaving, starting over somewhere new." I'd never known there was a basement apartment. I'd lived next door for 3 years and never seen a separate entrance, never noticed anyone coming or going, but my neighbor spoke with such certainty, such detail, that I almost believed her. The tea tasted bitter with an aftertaste that lingered long after I'd swallowed. My head felt heavy, thoughts becoming sluggish and disconnected. I tried to stand, but my legs wouldn't cooperate. "The problem with asking too many questions," my neighbor said, her voice sounding far away, "is that sometimes you get answers you weren't prepared for." I woke up in my own bed, fully clothed, with no memory of how I'd gotten there. The photographs were gone. The police report was gone. Even the book with the faded name on the first page had disappeared. When I looked out my window, my neighbor's house stood empty, a "for sale" sign planted in the front yard. I never found out what happened to the woman in the photographs. The police dismissed my story as a misunderstanding, a case of mistaken identity. They had no record of any missing person matching my description. The house next door sold quickly to a young couple with twin toddlers who wave at me from their front porch every morning. But sometimes, late at night, I can still taste that bitter tea. And sometimes, when I'm certain I'm alone, I catch a whiff of that sweet chemical smell drifting through my bedroom window. I've stopped looking for answers. Some truths are too dangerous to uncover, and some neighbors are better left unknown. The photographs are gone, but the woman's face remains burned into my memory. I see her in crowds sometimes, in the corner of my eye, always just out of reach. Whether she's alive or dead, victim or accomplice, I'll never know. But I've learned to live with the uncertainty, to accept that some stories don't have endings, only endless questions that echo in the silence of suburban nights. Crime 3, the smell hit me first, not decay, something else, sweet, like overripe fruit mixed with cleaning solution. I'd been living in this house for months, but I'd never noticed it before. Maybe because I'd never really looked at the basement door. It was always there, painted the same faded yellow as the kitchen walls, but somehow I'd convinced myself it was just a closet. The key was hanging on a nail just inside the pantry. Tarnished brass, warm to the touch even though the house was cold. When I turned it in the lock, the door opened with a sound like a sigh. The stairs creaked under my weight. Each step down made the smell stronger. At the bottom, I found boxes, dozens of them stacked against the walls, labeled in handwriting I didn't recognize but somehow felt familiar. The letters were neat, careful, the kind of penmanship they used to teach in schools. I opened the first box. Inside were photographs, not family pictures, surveillance shots, people walking to their cars, entering buildings, sitting in restaurants, all taken from a distance, through windows or from across the street. The subjects looked ordinary. A woman in a red coat, a man with a briefcase, a teenager on a bicycle, but someone had been watching them. Someone had been very patient. The second box contained receipts, hundreds of them. Gas stations, hardware stores, pharmacies, all dated within the past year, all paid in cash. I recognized some of the store names, places I'd been to myself, but the handwriting on the receipts wasn't mine. That's when I found the notebook. It was leather-bound, pages yellowed at the edges. The first entry was dated exactly 1 year ago. The writing was the same neat script from the box labels. It started like a journal, mundane observations about the weather, the neighbors, the mailman's routine. But as I read deeper, the entries became more specific, more focused. Subject leaves house every morning at the same time, always looks both ways before crossing the street, carries a blue bag, walks with a slight limp. Subject stopped at the pharmacy again, third time this week. Prescription bottles visible through the window, nervous behavior, keeps checking phone. Subject met with unknown individual at the coffee shop. Conversation appeared heated. Subject left money on the table and walked away quickly. I flipped through pages and pages of observations. The writer was documenting someone's entire life. Every habit, every deviation from routine, every interaction. It was methodical, professional, obsessive. Then I found my own description. New resident moved in last month, keeps irregular hours, doesn't interact with neighbors, frequently orders takeout, leaves lights on all night, appears to be running from something. My hands were shaking as I read the most recent entries. They were all about me, my grocery shopping habits, the times I took out the trash, the nights I couldn't sleep and stood at the window. Someone had been watching me since the day I moved in. The final entry was dated just 3 days ago. Subject has been asking questions about the previous tenant. Showed photo to the neighbor across the street. Story about missing relative doesn't match earlier statements. Subject may be law enforcement or private investigator. Recommend immediate relocation. I closed the notebook and looked around the basement with new eyes. This wasn't just storage. This was a command center, a place where someone had been planning, preparing. The boxes weren't random, they were organized by date, by subject, by purpose. I climbed the stairs quickly, my mind racing. The previous tenant, the person the landlord had mentioned briefly when I signed the lease. They'd said the last renter had left suddenly, paid through the end of the month, but disappeared overnight. No forwarding address, no explanation. But I hadn't been asking questions about any missing relative. I'd never shown anyone a photo. I'd never mentioned the previous tenant to anyone. Which meant whoever wrote those entries was still watching, still documenting, still planning. I went to the kitchen window and looked out at the street. Everything appeared normal. Parked cars, empty sidewalks, houses with their curtains drawn. But now I wondered which windows might have someone behind them with a camera, which parked cars might not belong to the neighbors. The phone rang. I let it go to voicemail, but the caller didn't leave a message. Just silence, then the click of disconnection. 5 minutes later, it rang again, same thing. I pulled out my laptop and searched for information about the previous tenant. The landlord had mentioned a name, but I couldn't remember it clearly. The lease agreement was upstairs in my bedroom, but I hesitated to leave the kitchen. From here, I could see both the front and back doors. That's when I noticed the basement door was open again. I was certain I'd closed it, certain I'd turned the key, but it was standing wide open, and I could smell that sweet chemical odor drifting up from below. I grabbed a flashlight from the kitchen drawer and went back down. The boxes were exactly as I'd left them, but the notebook was gone. In its place was a single photograph. It showed me standing in the basement, reading the notebook, taken from the stairs behind me. The timestamp on the photo was 15 minutes ago. I ran upstairs and locked the basement door, then checked every window in the house. All secure, all locked from the inside, but someone had been in the basement while I was up here. Someone who knew I'd found their surveillance post. Someone who wanted me to know they were still watching. I tried to call the police, but the phone was dead. No dial tone. The cell service bars on my phone showed no signal, even though I'd had full coverage just an hour earlier. That's when I realized the most disturbing part. I'd been living in this house for months, but I couldn't remember moving in. I couldn't remember packing my things or signing the lease. I couldn't remember the conversation with the landlord or the first night I'd slept here. What I could remember was waking up in the bedroom upstairs, fully clothed, with keys in my pocket and a headache that lasted for days. I'd assumed it was stress from relocating, but now I wondered if there had been any relocation at all. I went upstairs to look for my lease agreement, but the bedroom was different. The bed was made with military precision. The clothes in the closet were arranged by color and season. Everything was organized in a way that didn't match my personality or habits. On the nightstand was another notebook. This one was newer, the pages crisp and white. The handwriting inside was different, looser, more hurried. It was my handwriting. The first entry was dated 3 days ago. I know someone is watching me. I can feel it. Started documenting everything I can remember. Need to figure out who I am and why I'm here. I read through my own observations, written in my own hand, describing the same paranoid thoughts I was having right now. The same discoveries about the basement. The same realization that my memories weren't reliable. But I didn't remember writing any of it. The final entry was dated today, written in handwriting that looked like mine but somehow felt different. The watcher and the watched are the same person. The surveillance was never about someone else. It was about documenting the gaps, the blackouts, the times when I'm not really me. I put the notebook down and walked to the bathroom mirror. The face looking back was mine, but the eyes seemed unfamiliar, like I was looking at a photograph of someone who resembled me but wasn't quite right. Outside, a car door slammed, footsteps on the sidewalk, the sound of keys jingling, then silence. I went to the window and looked out. There was no car, no person, just the same empty street I'd been staring at for months. But on the kitchen table there was a new photograph. It showed me standing at the bathroom mirror, taken from behind. The timestamp was from just now. And in the background of the photo, barely visible in the reflection, was another figure. Someone else in the house, someone who looked exactly like me. I don't know which one of us is real. I don't know which one is doing the watching, but I know that the surveillance will continue. The documentation will go on. The boxes in the basement will fill with more photographs, more observations, more evidence of a life that might not be mine. The soil behind the garage was disturbed because someone or something had been buried there, but it wasn't a body. It was the person I used to be, the one with reliable memories and a coherent sense of self. What's left is just the watcher and the watched, trapped in the same house, documenting each other's existence, never quite sure which role they're playing at any given moment. The phone is ringing again. I won't answer it. I know it's just me, calling from somewhere else in the house, trying to remember who I'm supposed to be. Crime 4, I was scrubbing behind the vegetable drawer when I noticed a ridge, a thin seam in the plastic. I pressed on it and it clicked open, revealing a shallow cavity stuffed with old receipts, all from stores I don't recognize. The dates were missing. The ink was faded, but one of them had a note scribbled on the back in pencil. He knows, removed before she finds it. I've never seen that handwriting before, but the fridge came with the house. The house had been a steal. Even the realtor seemed surprised by the price. The previous owners had left quickly. She mentioned something about a job transfer. When I asked about forwarding mail, she just shrugged and said they'd handle it themselves. Now, holding these receipts in my kitchen, the fluorescent light buzzing overhead, I wondered what else they'd left behind. I spread the receipts across my counter. Hardware stores, pharmacies, a locksmith, one from a carpet cleaning service with a phone number written in the margin, the same unfamiliar handwriting. My fingers traced the faded ink as I dialed the number, not sure what I expected to hear. The voice that answered was cautious, professional. When I mentioned the receipt, there was a pause, then, that address again, I gave it to him, another pause. We did work there, but the client paid cash and asked us not to keep records, said it was a surprise for his wife, deep cleaning the whole downstairs. He hesitated. There were stains we couldn't explain, in the basement mostly. We recommended replacing the carpet entirely. I'd never been to the basement. The wooden steps creaked as I descended, the air growing cooler with each step. The basement was finished, painted white walls and tile flooring that looked relatively new, too new. I ran my hand along the baseboards looking for seams, for anything that didn't belong. In the corner behind an old water heater, I found a patch of wall where the paint was slightly different, fresher. I pressed against it, hollow. The next few hours blurred together. I found tools in the garage, a hammer, a small crowbar. The wall gave way easily, revealing a space that had been sealed from the inside. The smell hit me first, musty and chemical, like cleaning supplies mixed with something organic that had been hidden too long. Inside the cavity, wrapped in plastic, were photographs. Dozens of them, pictures of people I didn't recognize, taken from a distance through windows in parking lots. Some were dated, spanning several months. At the bottom of the pile, there was a journal bound in black leather. The entries were methodical, clinical, observations about routines, work schedules, when people left their houses, when they returned. The handwriting matched the notes on the receipts. But what disturbed me most was the final entry, dated just 2 days before the house went on the market. She's getting suspicious, asking too many questions about the carpet, about why I'm always in the basement, need to relocate, the new tenant won't know to look. I sat on my basement floor, surrounded by evidence of something I couldn't yet name, holding photographs of strangers who had no idea they were being watched. The house suddenly felt different around me, as if the walls were pressing closer. I thought about all the nights I'd slept here alone, never knowing what had been hidden beneath my feet. I should have called the police immediately, but something held me back. Maybe it was the way the realtor had avoided eye contact when discussing the previous owners. Maybe it was how quickly the sale had gone through, how eager everyone seemed to close the deal. Or maybe it was the growing realization that this wasn't just about the people in the photographs. I started researching missing persons reports, cross-referencing faces from the photos with online databases. 3 matches, all reported missing within the time frame of the journal entries, all last seen in areas near my neighborhood. The pattern was becoming clear, but the picture remained incomplete. The hardware store receipts told another story. Concrete mix, lime, plastic sheeting. Purchases made systematically over several weeks. I measured the basement again, looking for irregularities in the floor. Near the sealed wall, the tiles seemed slightly raised, as if something beneath them was creating pressure from below. I called the carpet cleaning service again. This time I pressed for details. The technician remembered the job more clearly now. The customer was nervous, he said, kept watching us work, asking if we could get blood out of concrete. Said his wife had an accident, cut herself badly, but there was no wife there that day. Just him pacing around, checking his watch. That's when I found the second compartment. It was behind the water heater, a section of drywall that moved when I leaned against it. Inside was a small safe, unlocked. The contents made my hands shake, driver's licenses, jewelry, personal items that clearly belonged to other people. At the bottom, a manila folder containing property deeds, insurance policies, and a list of addresses. My address was at the top with a note, staging complete, moved to secondary location. I realized then that this house wasn't just where he had lived, it was where he had worked, and I wasn't the new owner, I was the next project. The phone calls started that night, no voice, just breathing. The caller ID was blocked. I installed new locks but kept finding signs that someone had been inside while I was at work. Small things moved, items rearranged. Nothing taken, just disturbed enough to let me know I was being watched. I tried to sell the house, but the market had changed. The same realtor who had been so eager before now seemed reluctant to return my calls. When I finally reached her, she mentioned that there were complications with the title, issues that needed to be resolved before any sale could proceed, legal matters that could take months to untangle. I'm still living here, still finding new hiding places every week. Behind loose bathroom tiles, inside air vents tucked beneath floorboards. Each discovery reveals more about the person who lived here before me, and more about why this house had been available at such a convenient price. The photographs continue to surface, always in places I've already searched, as if someone is still adding to the collection. Sometimes I recognize faces from my own neighborhood, people I see walking their dogs or checking their mail, people who don't know they're being documented. Last week I found my own picture. It was tucked inside a book I'd never opened, a cookbook that came with the house. The photo showed me in my kitchen, scrubbing behind the vegetable drawer where this all began. The timestamp indicated it was taken 3 days ago from an angle that could only have been captured from inside my own home. On the back, in that same familiar handwriting, was a new note. The process continues. She's learning well. I check the locks every night now, but I'm starting to understand that security isn't really the issue. The house itself is the trap, and I'm not the hunter. I'm the next phase of someone else's long-term project. Every day I stay here, I become more like the person who lived here before me. Every hidden compartment I discover teaches me new ways to hide things myself. Sometimes I catch myself taking pictures of my neighbors, making notes about their routines. Just observations, I tell myself, just being careful. But the journal I found in the wall has empty pages at the end, and lately I've been thinking about what I might write there. The receipts in the refrigerator compartment are still there. I've added a few of my own. Crime 5, I was vacuuming, something I rarely do. When I lifted the rug in the living room, the hardwood underneath looked different, slightly discolored, with faint scrape marks around the edge. I tugged at one of the boards. It lifted easily. Underneath was a hollow space no bigger than a drawer. Inside, wrapped in yellowed newspaper, was a plastic bag filled with hair. Different colors, different lengths. Some still had roots attached. My hands shook as I held the bag up to the light. Blonde strands mixed with brown, black curls tangled with straight red locks. The newspaper was dated from years before I moved into this house, before the previous owner died, before her daughter sold me this place with a nervous smile and eager handshake. I set everything back exactly as I found it, replaced the board, smoothed the rug, but the vacuum stayed in the closet after that. The next morning I called the daughter. Her voice sounded strained when I mentioned finding something unusual. She agreed to meet me at a coffee shop downtown. She arrived wearing dark sunglasses despite the overcast sky, her fingers drumming against her cup. Mother was sick toward the end, she said when I described what I'd found. Dementia. She collected things, saved everything. Hair from brushes, clippings from the salon, said she was making something for charity. Her explanation felt rehearsed, too neat, too quick. I asked if her mother had ever mentioned other people staying in the house. Visitors, friends, the drumming stopped. There were no visitors, Mother kept to herself. But I'd been through the house thoroughly since moving in. Found receipts for groceries meant for multiple people, medicine bottles with different names, a second set of keys hidden in the kitchen drawer. That afternoon I drove to the local library. The obituary section revealed something interesting. The old woman had lived alone for decades, yet 3 different people had placed death notices in the paper. All claimed to be close family friends. None shared her last name. I found one of them listed in the phone directory, an elderly man who agreed to meet me at a park near his neighborhood. He walked with a cane and spoke in whispers, constantly looking over his shoulder. She helped people, he said, people who needed to disappear, start over, new identities, new lives. He described a network of individuals who provided safe houses, documents, transportation. The old woman was part of it. People fleeing abusive relationships, dangerous situations, legal troubles. They stayed in her basement for weeks or months before moving on. The hair, I said, what was that for? His face darkened, wigs, new appearances, but she kept samples, said it was for safety, proof of who had been there. Walking back to my car, I noticed the same sedan that had been parked near the coffee shop earlier. Different spot, same driver, a woman with short brown hair who looked away when our eyes met. That evening I returned to the hiding spot. This time I examined everything more carefully. The newspaper wrapping revealed something I'd missed before, names written in pencil along the margins, dates, initials, a ledger of sorts. One name appeared multiple times with question marks beside it, recent dates, after the old woman's death. I researched the name online, found missing person reports from neighboring states, all matching the same description. All last seen in this area. The next morning brought an unexpected visitor. The daughter stood on my porch, but something was different about her face, her hair. The nervous energy was gone, replaced by something colder. "You've been asking questions," she said. I invited her inside, leading her to the living room. She glanced at the rug, then back at me. Mother's work didn't end when she died. Some of us continue helping people who need to vanish. Her words hung in the air like smoke. I understood then that the hair collection wasn't just about disguises. It was documentation, evidence, insurance. "The person you've been researching," she continued. "They're not missing, they're free, living a new life somewhere safe." I wanted to believe her. The alternative was too dark to consider. But that night I heard footsteps in the basement, soft voices, the sound of running water through old pipes. When I went to investigate, everything was silent. The basement was empty except for a faint smell of shampoo lingering in the air. I found fresh hair clippings in the utility sink, blonde this time, still damp. In the morning, I checked the hiding spot again. The collection had grown, new samples wrapped in current newspaper. The names in the margins included one I recognized from a recent missing person report. I sit here now staring at the rug, wondering how many people have passed through this house, how many found the freedom they were seeking, how many never made it to their new lives. The daughter calls occasionally to check on me, always asks if I'm comfortable here, if I need anything, if I've found anything else unusual. I tell her no, everything is fine, normal. But I've started keeping my own collection, hair from the drain, names from the news, dates when the footsteps return. Because I'm beginning to understand that some truths are too dangerous to fully uncover. Some help comes at a price that can't be calculated, and some houses hold secrets that choose their own keepers. The vacuum remains in the closet. The rug stays exactly where it is. And sometimes, late at night, I hear the sound of scissors cutting through silence. Crime 6, I needed a screwdriver. The red toolbox hadn't been opened in ages, at least not by me. But when I lifted the lid, it wasn't tools inside, just photos. Hundreds of them all the same size, printed on cheap paper. They were surveillance shots, grainy, zoomed in. Most of them were taken through windows. One showed a person sitting on my couch, wearing my clothes. But I don't remember anyone ever taking that photo, or that moment. The basement felt colder than usual as I spread the pictures across the concrete floor. Each one captured a fragment of someone's life, a woman brushing her teeth, a man reading a newspaper, children playing in a backyard, but there was something wrong with every single image. The angles were too intimate, too close, the kind of shots you'd take if you were hiding. My hands started trembling as I noticed the pattern. Every photo had a small date stamp in the corner. They spanned several years, but they were all recent, all taken within the last decade, and they were all taken in my neighborhood. I recognized the brick wall from the house across the street, the distinctive yellow mailbox from the corner property, the wooden fence that belonged to the family with the barking dog. These weren't random surveillance photos. Someone had been systematically documenting the people who lived around me. But why were they in my toolbox? The next morning, I couldn't focus on anything else. I kept thinking about those photos, locked away in my basement safe now. I decided to walk through the neighborhood, casually observing the houses that had appeared in the images. Everything looked normal, peaceful even, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I stopped by the corner store where the elderly owner always remembered my name, even though I never told him what it was. When I asked him about anyone acting strangely in the area, he leaned closer and whispered that there had been complaints, people reporting feeling watched, curtains moving when no one should be home, cars parked in different spots overnight. He mentioned that a few residents had even called the police, but nothing ever came of it. No evidence, no witnesses, just an unsettling feeling that something wasn't right. That evening I went through the photos again, more carefully this time. I started to notice details I'd missed before. In one image, there was a reflection in a window, the faint outline of a person holding a camera. In another, I could see part of a vehicle's roof, just barely visible at the edge of the frame. But it was the third discovery that made my blood run cold. In several photos, I could see my own house in the background, and in one particular shot of the family across the street, there was someone standing in my front window. A silhouette, barely visible, but definitely there. The problem was I lived alone. I had lived alone for years. I spent the next few days obsessing over that detail. I checked my locks, examined my windows, looked for any signs that someone had been inside my house. Nothing seemed disturbed, but the feeling of violation was overwhelming. Someone had not only been watching my neighbors, they had been inside my home. Or maybe they still were. I decided to set up my own surveillance system. Just a simple camera pointed at my front door and another covering the living room. If someone was coming and going from my house without my knowledge, I would catch them. The first few nights revealed nothing unusual, just me moving through my own space, looking increasingly paranoid and exhausted. But on the fourth night, something appeared on the recording that I couldn't explain. Between two frames, lasting less than a second, there was someone else in my living room, standing exactly where I had been standing moments before, wearing the same clothes I had been wearing, but I was already upstairs asleep. I played the footage over and over, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. The timestamp showed it happened in the middle of the night. The figure moved naturally, comfortably, like they belonged there, like they knew exactly where everything was. The next morning, I found something that confirmed my worst suspicions. Hidden behind a loose floorboard in my bedroom closet was a key. It was identical to my front door key, but I had never made a copy. I had never given anyone else access to my home. As I held that key in my palm, I realized that all those surveillance photos might not have been taken by a stranger watching my neighborhood. They might have been taken by someone who already had access to all of our homes, someone who could come and go as they pleased. Someone who might still be watching. I thought about calling the police, but what would I tell them? That I found photos in my own toolbox, that someone who looked like me appeared in my security footage, that I discovered a key I didn't remember making. They would think I was losing my mind. Maybe I was. But late at night, when the house settles and every sound seems amplified, I find myself wondering if the person in those photos is really me at all, if the key really belongs to someone else, if the surveillance was never about watching my neighbors. Maybe it was about replacing them. The toolbox is gone now. I threw it away along with all the photos. But sometimes when I catch my reflection in the window, I wonder if someone else is looking back. Someone who knows this house better than I do. Someone who has been living here longer than I remember. The key is still hidden in my closet. I can't bring myself to throw it away, but I can't bring myself to use it either, because I'm afraid of what I might find on the other side of my own front door. And I'm afraid that whoever took those photos is still out there, still watching, still waiting. Still living in houses that don't belong to them. Crime 7, the smell hit me first. Sweet decay mixed with something chemical, like cleaning fluid that hadn't quite masked what it was meant to hide. I stood in the doorway of what used to be her kitchen, watching dust motes dance in the afternoon light streaming through unwashed windows. The house had been empty for months. The real estate agent handed me the keys with nervous fingers, avoiding eye contact when she mentioned the previous owner had left suddenly. No forwarding address, just vanished one morning, leaving behind a half-eaten breakfast and an unpaid mortgage. I'd bought the place sight unseen, drawn by the price and the promise of a fresh start. What I found instead was a home that felt like it was holding its breath. The first night I heard scratching inside the walls. Mice, I told myself, old houses settle. But the sound was too rhythmic, too deliberate, like someone tapping out a message in Morse code over and over until exhaustion finally pulled me under. I started exploring during daylight. The basement revealed nothing unusual except for a patch of concrete that looked newer than the rest. The previous owner had been handy, apparently, fixed things herself. The neighbors mentioned this when I introduced myself, how she'd always been working on some project or another, always buying supplies from the hardware store. She kept to herself, they said, quiet woman, never caused trouble. But there were whispers too, carefully worded observations about the visitors who came by her place late at night. Different cars, different faces, people who didn't look like they belonged in the neighborhood. I found the first photograph tucked behind a loose baseboard in the upstairs hallway, a Polaroid slightly faded, a man's face, but someone had drawn a red X across his features with what looked like nail polish. On the back, in careful handwriting, he won't stop calling. The scratching in the walls grew louder. I started documenting everything I found, more photographs, all marked with red X's, different faces, same careful handwriting on the back. He follows me to work. He knows where I live. The police don't believe me. The pattern emerged slowly. A woman documenting her stalker, or stalkers, multiple men who wouldn't leave her alone. The photos progressed chronologically, judging by the clothes and hairstyles. Years of harassment, carefully catalogued and hidden throughout the house like evidence she was afraid someone might find and destroy. But it was the audio recordings that changed everything. I discovered them by accident when I knocked over a loose floorboard in the bedroom closet. Underneath, wrapped in plastic bags, were dozens of cassette tapes, each labeled with initials and dates spanning 5 years. I found an old player at a thrift store and brought it home, hands shaking as I inserted the first tape. Her voice was calm, matter-of-fact. She described phone calls that came every night between midnight and dawn, heavy breathing, whispered threats, sometimes just silence, but she knew someone was there. She'd learned to recognize the sound of his breathing. The man from the grocery store parking lot called again tonight, she said on one recording. Same voice as the one who's been leaving flowers on my car. He knows my schedule. He knows I work late on Thursdays. I listened for hours. Her voice never wavered, never broke, even when describing the gifts left on her doorstep. Dead flowers, photos of herself taken from a distance. Items that had gone missing from her home, returned weeks later in strange places. But it was tape number 37 that made me pause the player and sit in silence for a long time. I think there are more of them now, she said. The breathing on the phone sounds different sometimes, younger, and I found footprints in the garden that don't match the ones from before. They're working together somehow, sharing information about me. The tape continued with details that made my skin crawl. Multiple stalkers coordinating their harassment, taking shifts watching her house. One would call while another left gifts, a systematic campaign of terror that had been going on for years. I called the police station and asked about any reports filed by the previous owner. The officer who answered seemed uncomfortable, put me on hold multiple times before finally admitting there had been numerous calls from that address, but no arrests, no charges filed. "Look," he said finally, "between you and me, she made a lot of accusations. Different men all the time, never any proof. After a while, we started thinking maybe she was seeing things that weren't there. But I'd seen the photographs, heard the recordings. The evidence was overwhelming. That night, the scratching in the walls stopped. Instead, I heard something else. Voices, muffled like they were coming from the basement. I crept downstairs with a flashlight, following the sound to that patch of newer concrete. The voices were clearer here. Multiple men discussing surveillance schedules, who would watch the house during which shifts, how to make sure she never felt safe, never had a moment of peace. I pressed my ear to the floor. The conversation continued, detailed and methodical. They knew her work schedule, her shopping habits, the route she took to visit her sister. They'd been planning something big, something final. Then I realized the voices weren't coming from beneath the concrete. They were coming from inside the walls themselves, from speakers hidden throughout the house, old recordings playing on some kind of timer. I found the control panel behind a false wall in the basement, dozens of cassette players, all connected to speakers installed throughout the house. A complex system designed to make someone believe they were being watched, followed, threatened. But by whom and why? I spent the next week going through every recording, every photograph, every scrap of evidence the previous owner had left behind. The pattern that emerged wasn't what I'd expected. The handwriting on the photos wasn't consistent. Neither were the voices on the tapes. What I'd thought was one woman documenting her harassment was actually multiple people, multiple situations, compiled together to create a narrative that felt complete, but was actually fragments of different stories. The real estate agent finally returned my calls. She sounded relieved when I asked about the previous owner's background. She worked for the police department, she said. Records division, had access to all kinds of case files, domestic violence, stalking cases, harassment reports. We always wondered if maybe she'd gotten too involved in her work, started identifying with the victims a little too much. The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. A woman who'd spent years processing other people's trauma, slowly losing herself in their stories, creating a composite narrative from dozens of real cases, convincing herself she was the victim in all of them. But that didn't explain the surveillance system in the house, the speakers in the walls, the elaborate setup designed to make someone believe they were being watched. I found the answer in the last recording, hidden separately from the others. Her voice was different here, tired, defeated. "I know no one believes me," she said. "The police think I'm crazy. My family thinks I'm paranoid, but I know what I've experienced. I know what they've done to me. So I'm creating proof, evidence that can't be dismissed or ignored. When they find this house, when they hear these recordings, they'll have to believe." She'd built her own prison, created the very harassment she'd been trying to document. The system in the basement wasn't meant to torment her. It was meant to validate her delusions, to provide the proof she needed that her fears were real. But there was one more thing, a detail that kept me awake for weeks after I'd put all the pieces together. The newer concrete in the basement wasn't just a home improvement project. And sometimes, late at night when the house was perfectly quiet, I could swear I heard something else beneath those recorded voices. Something real, something that sounded like scratching coming from underneath the floor. I never did find out what happened to the previous owner. where she went or why she left so suddenly. The house is quiet now. I disconnected the speakers, boxed up the recordings, tried to move on. But every so often I catch myself checking the locks twice before bed, listening for footsteps that shouldn't be there, watching for faces in windows that should be empty. Because sometimes the most terrifying prison is the one we build for ourselves. And sometimes, even when we think we understand the truth, there are still questions buried too deep to answer. The scratching in the walls has started again. Crime 8, I moved the couch to clean behind it and noticed a different sound when I tapped the wall. Duller. I knocked again, harder this time. The plaster cracked. Just behind it there was a cavity, maybe a foot deep. Inside, nailed to a wooden crossbeam, was a sealed envelope. No stamp, no name. Inside was a single photograph, a child standing alone in a field holding a pair of scissors. On the back, in shaky handwriting, she cut the silence. The house had been my grandmother's before she passed. I inherited it along with all her secrets, apparently. The photograph felt cold between my fingers, the paper slightly yellowed at the edges. The child in the image couldn't have been older than 8, wearing a pale dress that seemed to blend with the morning fog behind her. Her expression was blank, almost vacant, but her grip on those scissors was firm, deliberate. I set the photograph on the kitchen table and stared at it while my coffee grew cold. Something about the child's posture reminded me of my grandmother when she would stand by the window, watching the street with that same distant look. I had always assumed she was just observing the neighbors, but now I wondered what she had actually been watching for. The local historical society kept records of all the families who had lived in the neighborhood. The librarian, a thin woman with silver hair, pulled out boxes of documents and newspaper clippings dating back decades. I told her I was researching my family history, which wasn't entirely untrue. She seemed eager to help, spreading the papers across a wide table under the fluorescent lights. Most of the documents were mundane: property transfers, tax records, birth certificates. But tucked between the pages of a 1987 newspaper, I found a small article about a missing child. No photograph accompanied the story, just a brief description. A young girl who disappeared from a nearby elementary school during recess. She was last seen playing alone near the fence that bordered the empty field behind the building. The same field, I realized, that appeared in the photograph. The article mentioned that the child had been known for her unusual behavior. She would often be found standing motionless in corners, scissors in hand, cutting small pieces from her clothing, her hair, sometimes even the classroom curtains. Teachers had noted this in reports, but no one seemed to understand why she did it. The investigation lasted several months before being quietly abandoned. No body was ever found. I returned to the house and examined the wall cavity more carefully. There were scratch marks on the wooden beam where the envelope had been nailed, as if someone had tried to remove it before deciding to leave it there. The scratches looked fresh compared to the aged wood around them. I ran my fingers along the marks and felt a strange chill, despite the warmth of the afternoon. In my grandmother's bedroom, I began going through her personal belongings more systematically. In the bottom drawer of her nightstand, beneath layers of old handkerchiefs and prayer cards, I found a small metal box. Inside were more photographs, all of children, all in similar poses, all holding scissors. Some were in black and white, others in faded color. The dates on the back spanned nearly 40 years. Each photograph had a phrase written in the same shaky handwriting. She cut the silence, he trimmed the truth, they severed the connection. The words felt like code, like my grandmother had been documenting something she couldn't speak about directly. I spread all the photographs on the dining room table and studied them under the lamplight. The The children's faces were different, but their expressions were remarkably similar. That same vacant stare, that same firm grip on the scissors. I noticed something else. In the background of each photograph, barely visible, was the same wooden fence, the one that bordered the elementary school field. The next morning I drove to the school. It had been renovated several times since the 80s, but the field behind it remained unchanged. The fence was still there, weathered and leaning slightly inward. I walked along its perimeter until I found what I was looking for, a gap between two posts where a child could easily slip through. On the other side of the fence, the ground was uneven, marked by small depressions scattered throughout the field. Each depression was roughly the same size, about 3 feet long and 2 feet wide, shallow, too shallow for graves, but deep enough for something else. I knelt beside one of the depressions and brushed away the loose dirt with my hands. About 6 inches down, my fingers touched something hard and smooth. A small metal box, similar to the one I'd found in my grandmother's nightstand. Inside were scissors, child-sized, with bright red handles, and a folded piece of paper. The paper contained a list of names written in different handwritings, different inks. Some entries were dated decades apart. At the bottom of the list, in my grandmother's familiar script, were the words, "The children who cut themselves free." I sat in that field as the sun began to set, holding the list and trying to understand what my grandmother had been involved in. The missing child from 1987 wasn't an isolated incident. The photographs, the hidden boxes, the carefully maintained depressions in the ground, everything pointed to a pattern that had been maintained for decades. But maintained by whom and why? I thought about my grandmother's last days, how she would sometimes call me by names I didn't recognize, how she would ask if I had seen the children in the field. I had attributed it to her illness, to the confusion that comes with age. Now I wondered if she had been trying to tell me something important. The list of names in my hand represented children who had disappeared, children who had been forgotten by everyone except my grandmother. She had been their keeper, their memory, their secret guardian. But what had happened to them? Where had they gone after they cut themselves free? I returned to the house as darkness fell, but I couldn't bring myself to go inside. Instead, I sat on the front porch and watched the empty street, just as my grandmother used to do. I understood now that she hadn't been watching for danger, she had been watching for return. The children in the photographs, the names on the list, the scissors buried in the field, they weren't evidence of something terrible that had happened. They were evidence of something that was still happening, something that required someone to watch and wait and remember. As I held the photograph of the first child, the one who had started it all, I realized that my grandmother's vigil was now mine. The wall behind the couch was hollow because some secrets need space to breathe, and some truths can only be cut free by those brave enough to hold the scissors. Crime 9, I found the photograph tucked inside a library book I'd never borrowed. My face stared back at me from a Polaroid I'd never posed for, taken in a room I'd never been in. The timestamp was blurred, but something about the lighting felt recent, too recent. The book was one I'd picked up from the returns cart at the downtown library, a biography of a jazz musician whose name I couldn't pronounce. I'd grabbed it on impulse, drawn to the worn cover and the way it seemed to call to me from the shelf. Now, holding this impossible photograph, I wondered if impulse was really what had guided my hand. I studied the image closely. There I was, sitting at a kitchen table that wasn't mine, holding a cup of coffee with both hands like I always did when I was nervous. The stranger thing was my expression. I looked afraid. not startled or surprised, but genuinely, deeply afraid of something beyond the camera's frame. The library was nearly empty when I returned. I approached the circulation desk with careful steps, the photograph burning in my jacket pocket. "Excuse me," I said to the librarian, a woman with silver hair and tired eyes. "I found something strange in one of your books." She looked up from her computer screen, and for just a moment her expression changed. Recognition flickered across her face before she composed herself. "What kind of something?" she asked. I pulled out the photograph. Her hands trembled slightly as she took it, and I noticed she held it by the very edges, as if touching the surface might contaminate her fingerprints. "This was in the biography section," I said, "in the jazz book." She studied the image for what felt like hours, but was probably only seconds. Then she handed it back to me with a movement that seemed too quick, too eager to be rid of it. "People use all sorts of things as bookmarks," she said. Her voice was steady, but there was something underneath it. "You can keep it if you want." I left the library with more questions than answers. The photograph felt heavier in my pocket, and I couldn't shake the feeling that the librarian knew more than she was letting on. That evening I sat in my actual kitchen, comparing the room in the photograph to my own space. The table was different, the walls were different, even the angle of the light coming through the window was wrong, but somehow the person in the picture was undeniably me. I called my sister. "Do you remember me visiting you last month?" I asked without preamble. There was a pause. "You haven't visited me in 6 months, she said. "Why?" "Are you sure? Think carefully." Another pause, longer this time. "I'm sure. What's going on?" I couldn't explain it to her because I couldn't explain it to myself. Instead, I hung up and stared at the photograph again. In the background, barely visible on what appeared to be a kitchen counter, was a newspaper. The headline was too blurry to read completely, but I could make out enough letters to know it was recent. The next morning, I drove to the neighborhood shown in the reflection of the kitchen window. It took me 3 hours of driving through residential streets before I found it, a small house with blue shutters and a garden that matched the blurred background of the photograph. I parked across the street and waited. No one came or went. The house had that particular stillness that suggested either emptiness or something waiting inside. I knocked on the front door, no answer. I tried the handle and it turned easily. The kitchen was exactly as it appeared in the photograph. Same table, same chairs, same newspaper still folded on the counter. But the newspaper was dated 3 days ago, not last month when the photograph supposedly would have been taken. On the kitchen table was a digital recorder, red light blinking. I pressed play. My own voice filled the room. "I don't remember coming here. I don't remember sitting at this table. I don't remember being afraid." There was a pause, then the sound of a chair scraping against the floor. "But I am afraid," my voice continued, "because I think I've been here before. I think I've been here many times." The recording stopped. I looked around the kitchen again, searching for clues I might have missed. In the sink was a single coffee cup, still warm. Lipstick stained the rim, my shade, the one I'd been wearing yesterday. I checked my purse. My lipstick was missing. The refrigerator hummed in the silence. I opened it and found groceries I recognized, the same brand of milk I always bought, the same type of bread, even the same flavor of yogurt I'd had for breakfast. But I'd never shopped for this house. I'd never been in this kitchen before today. Or had I? I found a calendar hanging beside the refrigerator. Several dates were circled in red ink. I counted backwards from today and realized they marked a pattern every 2 weeks like clockwork. The pattern stretched back for months. My hands shook as I turned on the recorder again. This time I spoke directly into it. Today is the first time I remember being here, I said, but the evidence suggests otherwise. I placed the recorder back on the table and walked to the front door. As I reached for the handle, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. On the inside of the door, written in pencil in my own handwriting, were the words, "You always forget by tomorrow." I left the house and drove straight home, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was following a route I'd driven many times before. Every turn felt familiar. Every traffic light seemed to change at exactly the moment I expected it to. At home, I searched through my belongings with new eyes. In my bedroom closet, I found a shoebox I didn't remember owning. Inside were dozens of photographs, all of me, all in that same kitchen, all with the same expression of fear and confusion. Some were Polaroids like the first one. Others were printed on regular photo paper. A few appeared to be screenshots from video calls. In every single image, I was holding that same coffee cup, sitting at that same table, looking directly at the camera with the same haunted expression. At the bottom of the box was a letter in my own handwriting. If you're reading this, it means you've found the house again. It means the pattern is continuing. I don't know why we forget. I don't know why we keep going back. But I know that tomorrow you'll wake up and this will all feel like a dream you can't quite remember. Write it down. Document everything. Maybe one day we'll understand. The letter was dated yesterday. I looked at my hands holding the paper. They were steady now, calmer than they'd been all day. Part of me wanted to believe this was an elaborate prank, a breakdown, anything but the truth that was slowly crystallizing in my mind. I walked to my kitchen and opened the cabinet where I kept my coffee cups. One was missing, the same style as the one in every photograph. The sun was setting when I finally admitted to myself what I'd known since finding that first photograph. This wasn't the first time I'd discovered the house. This wasn't the first time I'd found the photographs. This wasn't even the first time I'd written myself a letter trying to break the cycle. Tomorrow I would wake up with no memory of today. I would go about my normal routine, and at some point, maybe next week, maybe next month, I would find myself drawn back to that library, to that book, to that photograph. And I would begin this discovery all over again. I sat down at my own kitchen table and picked up a pen. I had work to do before I forgot everything again. I had a letter to write to myself, evidence to document, a pattern to break. But even as I wrote, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd written these same words before, many times. And that somewhere in that house with the blue shutters, another recording was waiting to be made, another photograph was waiting to be taken. The cycle would continue, and tomorrow I would wake up innocent again. The only question was, who was making me forget? Story 10, the town had a secret hidden at the edge of the woods. There stood a house shrouded in mystery, its windows dark, its porch weary from the weight of time. No one laid claim to it, no one could recall its builder. Yet when a band of hikers strayed too close, they beheld a peculiar sight, names carved into the wooden walls, etched deep like ominous omens. At the end of the list, fresh and unscathed, was a name unknown to all, until a lone voice quivered, "That's mine." In the dead of night, a call came in. Dispatch logged it as a routine trespassing complaint. The voice belonged to Mason Wright, the leader of the hikers who stumbled upon his name etched into the abandoned abode. The responding officers anticipated mere mischief, maybe a jest among companions, but what awaited them defied logic. Detective Sarah Keller arrived as twilight blanketed the forest. Her flashlight pierced the darkness, revealing the weathered face of the structure. The names 27 in total ran vertically down the eastern wall. Some had faded with time, nearly vanishing against the aged wood. Others remained crisp, as though freshly carved. And at the base, Mason Wright, the cut still carrying hints of new sawdust. "I've never set foot here before," Mason insisted, his words forming mist in the chilly air. "I can't fathom how anyone would know my name." The inquiry commenced with checks on each name listed. The findings sent shivers through the detective team. Every name belonged to an individual reported missing over the past 40 years. Some cases had gone cold, others remained active. Yet all shared a chilling similarity: the individuals had vanished while hiking alone. Forensic experts documented each carving, noting the depths, techniques, and weathering patterns. The oldest name, Rebecca Hansen, tied to a missing persons case from 37 years earlier. The files recounted a young woman who ventured into those woods and never returned. Search parties uncovered naught but a lone hiking boot near a stream. Detective Keller extensively interviewed Mason. His tale remained unwavering. He bore no ties to the area beyond this hiking excursion with 4 college comrades. They had chosen the trail randomly, guided by an online suggestion. Nothing in his background linked him to the other names on the wall. The focus turned to Mason's companions. Emily Chen, the group's photographer, presented images captured during their trek. Analysts noticed a disquieting detail: a blurred figure lurking in the backdrop of 3 pictures. The silhouette resembled a tall, slender man, always partly veiled by trees. "We never spotted another soul on the trail," Emily maintained. "We would have remembered." Detective Keller ordered a search of the house's interior. Despite its deserted appearance, officers unearthed a chilling sight in the basement. Personal effects of the vanished hikers sat orderly on wooden shelves: watches, backpacks, cameras, wallets, each tagged with a name from the wall outside. The technicians meticulously catalogued every item. Beneath ultraviolet light, bloodstains emerged on the concrete floor, years of marks someone had tried to erase. Despite no bodies found beneath the house, cadaver dogs alerted near the thickening forest at the back of the property. As the inquiry escalated, Detective Keller observed odd conduct from Mason Wright. He reported peculiar incidents: whispers outside his flat, footprints in fresh snow leading to his door but not away, figures observing from the street. The department assigned an officer for his protection, yet Mason spiraled into paranoia. A breakthrough arrived when researchers unearthed land records hidden in county archives. The house had belonged to a recluse named Victor Blackwood, a hunter who vanished 15 years prior, his disappearance overlooked. Detective Keller secured a warrant to delve deeper into the surrounding woods. The search party uncovered a network of primitive hunting blinds strategically stationed along popular trails. Within one, they found a journal detailing meticulous observations, notes on hikers, their paths, gear, and behaviors. The penmanship matched samples from Blackwood's scant documents. Entries evolved from hunting animals to hunting humans, their routines, weaknesses, and techniques for their acquisition. The manhunt for Blackwood spanned multiple jurisdictions. Helicopters equipped with thermal imaging scoured the forest. Tactical squads combed every crevice, yet the suspect remained elusive. Mason Wright ceased communication. Officers dispatched to his residence found it deserted. On his bedroom wall, freshly carved, read a single line: the hunter becomes the hunted. The search for Mason persisted fruitlessly, until during a subsequent sweep of Blackwood's house, forensic technicians unearthed a chilling secret. Concealed behind a false wall in the basement lay a workshop with woodworking tools, wood preservatives, and a freshly carved piece of wood bearing a new name not yet affixed to the external wall. Detective Keller recognized the name instantly. It belonged to the head forensic technician who processed the house initially. The technician had called in sick that day and remained unreachable. Authorities erected a surveillance perimeter around the house. Cameras monitored every approach. Motion sensors awaited intrusions. The trap was set. 3 nights later, sensors sounded an alert. Security footage captured a figure emerging from the forest, impossibly tall and slender, moving with eerie grace. The figure advanced toward the house, seemingly unfazed by the surveillance. As tactical teams closed in, the cameras briefly lost connection. Upon restoration, the figure had vanished. The house stands under constant watch to this day. Mason Wright and the forensic technician were never located. The investigation persists, with fresh resources allocated as similar disappearances surface in other wooded regions. The names on the wall have become infamous among law enforcers. Some officers avoid uttering them. Local hikers now steer clear of the house, fearing that mentioning it may add their names to that dreaded list of names none dare speak. Story 11. In a quiet suburban neighborhood, a mysterious key arrived in the mail for Sarah Miller, wrapped in a plain envelope with no return address. The worn brass key seemed out of place, unfamiliar yet somehow evoking a strange sense of recognition. As Sarah tried it in every lock she owned, none yielded to its touch. Puzzled, she placed it on her coffee table, only for the broken grandfather clock in the hallway to emit a single, eerie chime, a sound long silenced by time. Perplexed by the strange event, Sarah reported the occurrence to authorities, setting off a chain of events that would unveil a chilling criminal investigation. Initially dismissed as a mere mishap by the responding officer, the key raised Sarah's unease. Reluctantly, the officer took the key as evidence, unaware of the dark path it would lead them down. Detective Robert Harmon of the Special Victims Unit received the case, a seemingly innocuous key on his desk. Despite its unassuming appearance, the key held a weight of unease. Background checks on Sarah revealed no red flags, just an ordinary retired teacher with no criminal past. Forensic analysis found only Sarah's fingerprints on the key, no traces of where it had been before reaching her hands. A breakthrough came when Harmon discovered a matching pattern from a cold case involving a storage unit with disturbing contents, a connection to unsolved disappearances and potential homicides. The key unlocked a past shrouded in mystery, leading to the unsettling truth of a predator lurking in the shadows. The search focused on Harold Jenkins, a former neighbor of Sarah's with a hidden past. Jenkins, a quiet and unassuming man, had left behind a trail of untraceable steps, evading detection until now. As the investigation deepened, a grim revelation emerged from a hidden room beneath the floorboards of a cabin linked to Jenkins' dozens of brass keys, each bearing a name and date, a macabre ledger of lives intertwined with darkness. The manhunt for Jenkins intensified, the community gripped by fear as the keymaster's atrocities came to light. An extensive search led to a remote encounter captured by a wildlife photographer, signaling a final confrontation in the wilderness. Jenkins, cornered and desperate, met his end in a standoff with authorities, leaving behind a haunting legacy of horrors. The closure brought little solace as the true extent of Jenkins' crimes unfolded, revealing a trail of victims and unspeakable deeds. Families found answers but carried the burden of loss, forever scarred by the darkness that had touched their lives. Sarah, haunted by the proximity of evil, never returned home, leaving behind a clock that had betrayed her trust. The case, a stark reminder of the monsters that walk among us, remains a chilling testament to the fragility of safety. Researchers delve into Jenkins' writings in search of warning signs, hoping to prevent such tragedies from recurring. And in a silent evidence locker, a collection of keys stands as a grim reminder of lives snuffed out, a haunting echo of the darkness that can lurk behind a facade of normalcy. Story 12, the realtor's listing made no mention of a basement. The blueprints offered no clue to its existence. Yet beneath the old carpet, a hidden door awaited the curious touch of the Mercer family. A handle heavy with rust required the combined effort of three to reveal the secrets lurking beyond. As the door creaked open, a rush of stale air, thick with the scent of damp earth, enveloped them. Descending steps led into darkness, promising the unknown. Expecting storage, they instead discovered a solitary chair beneath a swaying light bulb, casting eerie shadows. And on the wall behind it, a row of photographs, familiar faces, their own faces, captured unawares. The Mercers had moved into the suburban property during winter, drawn by its character and supposed history. Little did they anticipate the chilling history that awaited them, ready to intertwine with their lives in unexpected ways. Detective Sarah Connors arrived at the scene with her partner, the crime unit already at work securing the area with fluttering yellow tape. Mrs. Mercer's shaken voice had relayed the unsettling discovery beneath their living room floor. Connors, with practiced efficiency, directed the forensic team to meticulously document every detail of the basement before further exploration. The concrete walls, the solitary chair, the wall of haunting photographs, all were captured under the harsh glare of camera flashes. Each step into the small basement revealed more unsettling truths, leading to a perplexing puzzle that defied easy solutions. The investigation uncovered fingerprints belonging to past owners, hinting at a dark legacy that had passed through the property unnoticed. Previous families had come and gone, unaware of the hidden depths within the house they thought they knew. With each revelation, the mystery deepened, sending shivers down the spines of all involved. As the case unfolded, hidden passages, surveillance equipment, and a journal filled with disturbing observations came to light. Edward Kelvin, the enigmatic figure behind the chilling surveillance, had crafted a web of secrets within the very walls of the house. His presence, unseen yet all-encompassing, had turned the home into a stage for his private obsession. The manhunt for Kelvin revealed a frail figure, long accustomed to the shadows he had made his domain. His detached demeanor and delusional justifications painted a portrait of a man lost in his own twisted reality. The families, unwitting players in his voyeuristic drama, fled the house, leaving behind a specter of fear and unease that lingered long after. Kelvin's trial laid bare the extent of his intrusion, showcasing the meticulous planning that had transformed the house into a prison of observation. As the jury rendered its verdict, Kelvin remained unfazed, lost in the recesses of his fractured mind. The once haunted property was razed to the ground, burying the dark secrets beneath layers of soil and concrete. Yet for those who had called it home, the echoes of Kelvin's presence lingered. In quiet moments they found themselves glancing over their shoulders, questioning the sanctity of their privacy. The house, now reduced to rubble, lived on in memory as a haunting reminder of how easily the line between safety and surveillance could be blurred. And as they sought solace in new surroundings, the chilling question remained: were they truly alone, or was there still a presence watching, waiting within the walls of their past? Story 13. The weathered envelope exuded an aura of time gone by, its corners tinged with a faded yellow hue, yet the postage stamp bore the freshness of recent days. With meticulous care, the detective peeled it open, revealing a solitary sheet of paper within. The message, hastily typed in an erratic font, read, "I am sorry for what I did." A peculiar dampness clung to the paper, carrying with it a faint scent of iron. It was then that the detective's gaze fell upon a reddish smear along the bottom edge, a stark contrast to the typed words. It was no ordinary stain, not ink but human blood. Detective Sarah Morgan, her gloved hands moving with practiced precision, secured the letter in an evidence bag, mindful of the weight of its implications. The forensic team's findings confirmed her suspicions. The blood belonged to a victim of an unsolved homicide that had long cast a shadow over the department. The victim, a budding journalist named Rebecca Warren, had met a tragic end in her own apartment, the scene marred by multiple stab wounds. Her laptop was missing, her notes strewn about, hinting at a connection between the attack and an investigative piece she had been pursuing. Despite exhaustive efforts, the case had remained unsolved until the arrival of this enigmatic letter at the precinct, bearing the simple address, Homicide Division. Scant fingerprints adorned the paper and envelope, mere smudges hinting at a cautious sender who had donned gloves. The postmark, however, offered a glimmer of hope in the form of a tangible lead. Gathering her team in the dimly lit briefing room, Detective Morgan confronted the stark walls adorned with the echoes of past investigations, crime scene snapshots, timelines, and fruitless suspect profiles. Centered amidst these reminders of thwarted justice was the image of the ominous letter. "This changes everything," she intoned, her voice a whisper in the stillness. "Our perpetrator shows remorse." Detective James Chen, her steadfast partner in this enduring pursuit of truth, scrutinized the letter thoughtfully. "Or perhaps they seek to deceive us, to play a twisted game," he posited. The forensic team's analysis traced the unique typewriter impression to a model long out of production, a relic from a bygone era, rare but not beyond reach. Thus began a search reaching out to antiquarians and collectors across the region, a quest for the elusive machine that birthed these cryptic missives. As the investigation unfurled its tendrils, the focus shifted back to Rebecca's life, a portrait painted in shades of dedication and unflinching pursuit of justice. Her editor recounted tales of her unwavering resolve, particularly in the face of corruption. The tendrils of her final investigation reached into the shadowed recesses of a prominent family embroiled in political ties. A patriarch's passing had left behind a legacy of discord, with siblings entangled in a web of accusations and greed. In a pivotal moment, the detectives revisited Rebecca's boyfriend, Michael Barnes, seeking answers veiled in shadows. His demeanor, once a mask of grief, now bore subtle fractures under the weight of newfound evidence. Rebecca spoke of being followed, he confessed, his voice laced with regret. "I dismissed her fears as paranoia fueled by her investigation. I should have heeded her warnings." While the detectives delved deeper into this revelation, a second missive arrived, bearing the same typewritten script, the same haunting trace of blood. This time the message unfolded with chilling clarity. She unearthed secrets of the family, of the inheritance, of the patriarch's demise. It was never meant to escalate to this extent. The threads of the investigation led them to the grand estate of the deceased patriarch, where the eldest son, Richard, stood under the lens of scrutiny. Amidst his collection of antiquities lay vintage typewriters, a clue that refused to be overlooked. Questioning Richard unearthed rehearsed responses, polished and devoid of authenticity. A breakthrough emerged when microscopic fibers on the envelopes were traced back to custom stationery exclusive to the family's youngest daughter, Eleanor. Her revelation that Richard had borrowed her stationery weeks prior ignited a spark of certainty. A search of Richard's abode unveiled a concealed chamber, a clandestine cache of damning evidence, newspaper clippings, surveillance snapshots, and a vintage typewriter mirroring the one implicated in the letters. DNA analysis confirmed the blood as Rebecca's own. The narrative took an unexpected turn as the labyrinth of connections unveiled a clandestine alliance between Richard and Michael. Financial transactions trailed back to Richard, a shadow of complicity in the days leading to Rebecca's demise. Confronted with the stark truth, Michael's resolve crumbled. Rebecca had uncovered Richard's dark secret, his hand in his father's untimely end, he admitted, the weight of guilt heavy upon his words. I relayed her findings to Richard, believing it would deter her pursuit. I never fathomed the tragedy that would follow. The final puzzle piece clicked into place as Alina came forth with a damning recording, a clandestine conversation capturing Richard and Michael plotting Rebecca's silence permanently. Richard's voice, an echo of malice, rang clear in the shadows of deceit. In a desperate bid to flee justice, Richard's flight was cut short, his arrest sealing his fate. The prosecution wove a tapestry of evidence around the blood-stained letters, the vintage typewriter, the financial transactions, and Alina's incriminating recording. Michael, in a bid for leniency, offered his testimony in exchange for a plea deal. Throughout the trial, Richard maintained a facade of innocence, casting blame upon Michael as the architect of deception. Yet the scales of justice tipped decisively, the jury swiftly delivering a verdict of guilt. As Richard was led away, shackled by the weight of his crimes, Detective Morgan approached the grieving figures of Rebecca's parents, a silent gesture of solace in an ocean of grief. Though no words could mend their shattered world, the verdict brought a semblance of closure, a balm for their wounded hearts. The blood-stained letters lingered in the shadows of the evidence vault, a silent testament to the intricacies of guilt and the unfurling of truth. The tale of Rebecca Warren transcended its confines, becoming a cornerstone in the annals of detective lore, a parable of how even the most meticulous schemes unravel under the weight of conscience, how a mere typewriter could unfurl the tapestry of a killer's undoing. In the hushed corridors of justice, the echoes of Rebecca's story resonated, a reminder that the shadows cast by unsolved mysteries would yield to the relentless pursuit of truth. Story 14, The Mystery of the Whispering House. She desired to give the nursery a fresh coat of paint before the baby's arrival. The walls, once a faded blue, held secrets within their layers. As the white paint swept over the surface, a hidden message emerged, letters slowly coming into focus, urging, "Don't let it hear you." A shiver ran down her spine. Stepping back, she noticed something peculiar, tiny handprints etched in the fresh paint, too high for a child to reach. This discovery in the nursery of the Morgan residence marked the beginning of what would be known as the Whispering House case. The young couple had bought the Victorian home at a remarkably low price, unaware of its dark past. Detective Sarah Klein arrived at the doorstep, ready to uncover the truth. The pregnant woman, her belly swollen beneath paint-stained overalls, recounted the eerie findings. The detective observed the woman's weary eyes, evidence of sleepless nights. The story unfolded as the woman revealed that the previous owners had vanished without a trace, leaving behind only essential belongings in their hurried departure. Walking through the historic house, Detective Klein's footsteps echoed on the creaking floorboards. In the nursery, the unfinished message on the wall hinted at a sinister history. Next to it, 5 small handprints stood out in the wet paint, chillingly placed at adult height. Back at the precinct, the detective delved into the property's records. The house had changed hands multiple times, each family staying for a brief period. Child welfare reports hinted at a troubling pattern. Whispers, shadows, and a sense of being watched plagued the children who lived there. Further investigation unveiled the house's connection to Alina Blackwood, a widow who once ran an orphanage on the premises. 5 children under her care had vanished without a trace, their fate a mystery. Residents' accounts painted a picture of eerie occurrences, a haunting presence that seemed to watch over the inhabitants, especially the children. The recurring message found under layers of paint tied back to Alina's dark past. With the current owner's consent, ground-penetrating radar uncovered anomalies beneath the basement floor. The subsequent excavation revealed a chilling truth: 5 small sets of remains, arranged in a circle, confirming the tragic fate of the missing children. The detectives' persistence led to the closure of a long-standing cold case, finally giving the victims the justice they deserved. Yet even with the case solved, a lingering unease remained. The nursery's walls, once demolished, still echoed with ghostly whispers. Workers reported feeling a presence, a sensation that lingered long after they had left. The house, tainted by its past, was left abandoned, a silent witness to unspeakable horrors. Detective Klein's final report detailed the unearthly occurrences within the Whispering House. Photographs of glowing handprints and the cryptic message served as a haunting reminder of the lingering darkness. Despite the closure brought by the case, the spiritual questions surrounding the house's past remained unanswered. Some crimes, it seemed, left a mark that not even time could erase. Story 15. The worn wooden plank shifted under her weight, a subtle movement that caught her attention. Intrigued, she knelt down and traced the edges of the loose board with her fingertips, sensing the hidden secret beneath the seemingly solid floor. Gently, she lifted the boards, unveiling a dark, narrow space that lay concealed beneath her new home. As her eyes adjusted to the dimness, she made out shapes within the shadows: a mattress, a chair, and in the corner, a weathered notebook filled with pages bearing her name, written repetitively as if in a trance. Detective Morgan Reed stood silently behind Sarah Coleman, observing the mix of fear and curiosity flickering in Sarah's gaze as she peered into the mysterious chamber below. It wasn't just the discovery of a hidden room that unsettled Sarah. It was the violation of her sanctuary, the intrusion of something sinister into what was meant to be a fresh beginning. "Do not disturb anything," Detective Reed cautioned, her voice steady yet commanding. With a click, the flashlight illuminated more of the concealed space, exposing walls adorned with surveillance photographs of Sarah, images captured without her knowledge, documenting her every move. Sarah had purchased the quaint cottage from the estate of an elderly man named Walter Green, a solitary figure who had passed away with no known kin. The property had stood empty for months, its history shrouded in silence. The real estate listing had painted a picture of charm and minor renovations, omitting any mention of the chilling secrets lurking beneath the floorboards. "I never met him, the previous owner," Sarah murmured. "The neighbors spoke of his reclusiveness. I was told the basement was sealed off long ago. The inspection report said nothing about this." Crime scene investigators arrived, their footsteps echoing against the wooden floors as they meticulously documented every detail of the hidden chamber. Dusty fingerprints, dated photographs, and a trail of obsession left behind by Walter Green painted a haunting picture of his fixation on Sarah over the years. The department psychologist explained the escalation of Walter's obsession, the transition from fantasy to a disturbing reality that hinted at darker intentions. Reed's investigation delved deeper, uncovering a troubling connection between Walter and a former coworker who revealed snippets of Walter's fixation on Sarah. A search of Walter's locker led to a storage unit, unveiling a meticulous replica of Sarah's previous living space, a disturbing shrine to his delusion of being destined to be with her. The calendar marked with a foreboding date hinted at a plan that never came to fruition, halted only by Walter's sudden demise. Walter's troubled past with erotomania, a condition marked by delusional beliefs of love and connection, shed light on his fixation on Sarah. Despite her lack of recollection of ever meeting him, she had unwittingly become the object of his twisted affection. After the case was closed, Sarah made the difficult decision to sell the house, haunted by the thought of what could have been if she had not discovered the hidden room. Detective Reed kept a watchful eye on her, a silent guardian against the shadows of the past that lingered. The cottage passed into new hands, the hidden room sealed off and forgotten, but for those who knew the truth, it remained a chilling reminder of the unseen dangers that lurk beneath the surface of seemingly ordinary lives. The tale of the room beneath the floor whispered of shadows that fade but never truly vanish, of the fragile line between safety and peril, and of the quiet resilience of those who emerge from the darkness, forever changed. Story 16. The mysterious parcel arrived without a return label or tracking number, just a damp cardboard box touched by the morning dew. It was not intended for Sarah Miller. Her address was correct, but the name was a stranger's. She should have disregarded it, left it untouched on the porch, yet curiosity won the battle within her. Slowly, she peeled back the tape, anticipating mundane contents like books or clothes. However, what lay inside was a VHS tape, accompanied by a lone sticky note that simply stated, "Watch alone." Sarah held the black plastic tape in her hands, feeling an inexplicable weight to it, as if it carried the burden of forbidden knowledge. Her fingers lingered on the worn edges, tracing the imperfections on the casing. The note, bearing the marks of urgency in its handwritten strokes, hinted at secrets waiting to be unraveled. Meanwhile, the typical sounds of suburban life continued outside her home: a distant dog's bark, children's laughter, the drone of a lawnmower slicing through the quiet morning. Bringing the package inside, Sarah placed it on her kitchen counter, uncertainty clouding her thoughts. The name Daniel Whitaker meant nothing to her. In her years of residing in the house, mail for that name had never crossed her path. The former residents, the Johnsons, had long moved away to be near family. Curiosity and unease danced in her mind as she glanced at her old VCR, a relic of nostalgia. There was something about the tape that beckoned to her, a mystery concealed within worn black plastic. Against her better judgment, Sarah inserted the tape into the machine. At first, static flickered across the screen, gradually sharpening into focus. A dimly lit room materialized, illuminated by a single lamp casting shadows. The camera angle seemed hurried, capturing a man seated in a wooden chair, his features initially shrouded in darkness. "My name is Daniel Whitaker," the man's voice, low but unwavering, filled the room. "If you're watching this, someone has found you, which means they will find me as well." As he leaned forward, the light revealed a face marked by exhaustion and caution-tired eyes, stubbled chin, disheveled hair. "I am innocent of her death, you must believe me. They planted evidence, implicating me with no truth behind it." The camera trembled slightly as Daniel adjusted it, offering glimpses of the bare room's minimalistic surroundings, a stark space occupied by someone ready to flee at a moment's notice. "They framed me. The authorities will claim I knew her, that we quarreled, that witnesses heard our disputes. It is all false. I never encountered Catherine Walsh until her tragic demise became public knowledge." His voice quivered, lifeless, murdered in her own home, and yet my DNA was inexplicably present at the crime scene. Detective Eliza Ramirez scrutinized the identical VHS tape resting on her desk, the fifth one to surface. 5 tapes, 5 disparate recipients, all carrying Daniel Whitaker's desperate plea, a man officially accused of Catherine Walsh's murder, who had vanished without a trace on the day her body was discovered. Initially, the Walsh case seemed straightforward: a young professional woman strangled in her residence. No signs of forced entry, incriminating DNA evidence pointing to Whitaker, who had been near her home in the days leading to the tragedy. However, the arrival of the tapes complicated the narrative. The tapes add layers to the mystery, Detective Ramirez noted into her recorder, updating her case files. Whitaker is either orchestrating an elaborate deception or exposing something far more sinister. Her evidence board displayed images of Catherine Walsh in happier times, alongside gruesome crime scene photos too disturbing to dwell on, maps pinpointing the tape recipients' locations, and at the center, Daniel Whitaker's haunting driver's license photo, his gaze seeming to beseech for understanding. A pivotal revelation arose when Ramirez unearthed that Catherine Walsh had been embroiled in a whistleblower case against her employer, Pharmacorp, a potent pharmaceutical entity with governmental ties. Walsh had unearthed discrepancies in their clinical data, revealing a cover-up of severe drug side effects in a rush to market a new medication. She was set to testify. A former colleague divulged to Ramirez in hushed tones, constantly glancing over their shoulder. Catherine possessed evidence proving that company executives were aware of the issues but chose to bury them. The trial was imminent. As the detective delved deeper, anomalies began to surface. The DNA evidence seemed too meticulously placed, witness testimonies appeared rehearsed, and security footage conveniently corrupted during crucial time frames surrounding the murder. Sarah Miller received a subsequent package 3 days following the tape, a trove of documents, including clinical reports, internal correspondences, and email excerpts from Pharmacorp, all bearing Catherine Walsh's digital signature, validating her claims. The investigation pivoted as Detective Ramirez connected with other tape recipients, unraveling Whitaker's breadcrumb trail. He had been employed in IT security for a Pharmacorp contractor, encountering Catherine's name flagged in a suspicious security protocol he stumbled upon. They monitored her activities, Whitaker divulged in a subsequent tape. I witnessed the surveillance directives in the system. They knew she was accumulating evidence, and then I was abruptly barred from the network. The following day she was gone, and I found myself framed for her murder. The breakthrough occurred when Sarah Miller discerned a crucial detail on her copy of the tape that had eluded others. A reflection in a window behind Whitaker revealed a lineup of storage units. Collaborating with Detective Ramirez, they identified the location. Inside Unit 217 lay the key to the entire conspiracy: Whitaker's journal chronicling the treachery, Catherine's original files, and damning blueprints outlining Whitaker's framing. Inscribed in the handwriting of Pharmacorp's head of security, a former cop wielding access to evidence protocols. Justice did not manifest through a dramatic arrest, but through an irrefutable accumulation of evidence. 3 Pharmacorp executives faced indictment, with the head of security confessing and cooperating as a witness against his superiors. The tainted drug was withdrawn from consideration. Daniel Whitaker emerged from seclusion, emaciated and haunted by his fugitive existence. The charges against him were dismissed, yet the ordeal had left an indelible mark. Sarah Miller encountered him once more as he came to reclaim his tape. They exchanged a few words on her porch, where his enigmatic parcel had first arrived. "Why me?" she inquired. "Why send it to my address?" He gazed at her wearily. "The algorithm selected you. I needed individuals unconnected to me or Catherine, someone off their radar. someone who might still trust their own judgment amidst the media's allegations of my guilt. The former suspect and unwitting witness lingered in silence, contemplating the fragile boundary separating justice from manufactured falsehoods. Sarah eventually remarked, the mistaken address turned out to be the precise one. The VHS tapes were archived as evidence, tangible reminders that truth sometimes arrives in unanticipated packages, bearing unfamiliar names, awaiting a curious soul to peer inside. Story 17. In a sleepy town where time seemed to drift lazily, there was a costume shop preparing to close its doors for good, offering its old wares to anyone willing to take them off their hands. Among the fading relics, a woman drawn by a sense she couldn't quite name reached out a hand and plucked a mask from a forgotten corner of a dusty shelf. The mask's features were delicate, yet there was something unsettlingly lifelike about it, as if it held secrets beneath its painted surface. When she brought it to the counter, the cashier hesitated, a flicker of unease crossing his face. "That's not ours," he muttered, bewildered. Perplexed, the woman checked for a tag, but there was none to be found. Shrugging off the strange encounter, she decided to take the mask home with her, unaware of the enigmatic journey it would set in motion. That night, as the moon cast a silvery glow through her curtains, she stirred from her slumber to a soft sound, like the whisper of fabric shifting in the darkness. Her heart quickened as she reached for the lamp, illuminating her room. The mask was no longer resting innocently on the dresser where she had left it. Instead, it sat upon her nightstand, its gaze fixed upon her with an intensity that sent shivers down her spine. The woman, known as Catherine Reed, would later be discovered by her concerned neighbor. The morning light spilled into her silent home through the slightly ajar front door, revealing a scene that would puzzle investigators for years to come. Catherine lay motionless on her bedroom floor, the mask mysteriously absent, adding an eerie layer to the already chilling tableau. Detective Morgan arrived at the scene as forensics diligently captured every detail with their cameras, the rhythmic click of shutters blending with hushed voices in the stillness of the house. "No signs of forced entry," noted one officer, scribbling in his notepad. The detective's keen eyes swept across the room, noting the subtle nuances that whispered of a story untold: a partially open drawer, a lipstick-stained water glass on a nightstand. Everything appeared ordinary, except for the life that had been extinguished within those walls. The medical examiner, his expression solemn, bent over Catherine's body, searching for answers in the silence that enveloped the room. Cause of death unclear at first glance, no visible wounds, no indication of a struggle, he remarked, gesturing towards her frozen visage, but observed the terror etched into her features. Catherine, a woman known for her meticulous eye as an art appraiser, had led a quiet existence, distinguished by her passion for authenticity. Colleagues spoke of her uncanny ability to discern a forgery from the genuine article with a single glance. Her boss, recounting her expertise, remarked she had a way of spotting discrepancies that others overlooked. The detective pondered whether Catherine's discerning eye had inadvertently led to her tragic fate. A crucial piece of the puzzle emerged from security footage retrieved from the now desolate costume shop. The cashier's genuine confusion over the mask's origin raised more questions than answers, prompting a visit from the detective herself. The shop owner, visibly agitated, revealed that the mysterious mask had surfaced during a clearance sale, its provenance a mystery even to him. "It wasn't part of our inventory," he confessed, the weight of the unknown pressing upon his words. Pressed further, he reluctantly divulged a dark secret. The mask was but one of many peculiar items acquired from the estate sale of a collector who had met a mysterious end. A breakthrough in the investigation came with the discovery of microscopic fibers embedded in Catherine's fingertips, a clue that hinted at a struggle unbeknownst to those who found her lifeless form. The lab technician explained, "These fibers are unique, a blend of human hair and an unidentified organic substance not found in any known database. They suggest she was clutching something with great intensity." As the investigation unfolded, a chilling pattern emerged, linking Catherine's demise to a string of unsolved deaths spanning decades. Each victim had come into possession of a peculiar mask shortly before meeting their untimely end, their faces frozen in expressions of unbridled terror, as if witnessing something beyond comprehension. A retired detective who had once delved into a similar case shared a revelation with Detective Morgan in a clandestine meeting. Hands trembling, he slid a yellowed file across the table, revealing a cryptic detail hidden within each mask, an ancient script hinting at a ritual involving the transference of souls, a macabre legacy that had eluded explanation for generations. A glimmer of truth emerged from an unexpected source, a journal clandestinely tucked away behind a loose baseboard in Catherine's apartment. Her final entry, penned in a frenzy of fear and desperation, detailed her unsettling discoveries about the malevolent nature of the mask she had unwittingly brought into her home. "The mask moves," she had scrawled, the words a testament to her growing dread. "It watches me, its gaze unrelenting. The symbols within it match those from past tragedies. Each mask claims a life before seeking a new host. The collector who owned them met a similar fate. The entity within craves a vessel, passing from one victim to the next in an endless cycle of horror." With the pieces of the puzzle falling into place, the cause of Catherine's demise was finally unveiled, an insidious fear so profound it had triggered a fatal cardiac event. What terror could provoke such a fatal reaction, snuffing out a life in the dead of night? The investigation took a darker turn when footage from a vigilant neighbor's surveillance camera revealed a chilling sight: a figure, cloaked in darkness and wearing a mask eerily reminiscent of Catherine's own, departing her home with an uncanny mimicry of her movements, a disturbing imitation that hinted at a sinister force at play. Despite a frantic search for the missing mask, it remained elusive, slipping through the cracks of official scrutiny until rumors surfaced of its reappearance in a distant vintage shop. By the time investigators arrived, it had vanished once more, leaving a trail of unanswered questions in its wake. The detective, haunted by the enigma that had claimed Catherine's life, safeguarded her journal as a grim reminder of the inexplicable forces that lurked beyond the realm of reason. In the stillness of the night, she would sometimes start awake, a sense of being watched lingering in the shadows. With a practiced routine, she would secure her windows and doors, warding off the specter of the mask that hungered for new vessels to ensnare in its cycle of terror. The tale of the mask, a vessel of ancient malevolence that traversed time and space in search of unwitting hosts, remained a whispered legend among those who dared to delve into the mysteries that dwelled in the shadows. And as the night descended once more, casting its veil over a slumbering world, the mask remained out there, biding its time until it found another soul to ensnare, another victim to succumb to the chilling embrace of its empty gaze. Story 18. The gentle current whispered secrets as it meandered that quiet morning, the water shimmering like liquid glass under the soft light. The lone fisherman, lost in his thoughts, scarcely noticed the peculiar sight of a lone suitcase bobbing near the tranquil shore. Initially dismissing it as a mere discard of old garments, his curiosity piqued as he drew closer, drawn by an unusual scent that hung heavy in the air, thick, sweet, and unmistakably unsettling. The suitcase was bound in chains, its once gleaming edges now tarnished by exposure to the elements. When the authorities pried it open, it revealed not clothes, but a macabre reality. Within lay a tangle of hair, fingers frozen in a haunting grip, and at the very bottom, a chilling note declared, "This isn't the first." Detective Sarah Mercer stood at the scene, a delicate handkerchief pressed to her lips, her gaze somber as she surveyed the grim tableau before her. The victim, a woman in her mid-30s named Catherine Walsh, lay before them, her dark locks matted and her once pale skin now marked by the touch of water. The meticulous work of the medical examiner painted a solemn picture of the tragedy, capturing every detail before the body was gently removed from its watery grave. What struck Mercer most profoundly was not the callous manner of disposal, but the eerie reverence with which the victim had been prepared, manicured nails, freshly styled hair, clad in luxurious attire. "She was not killed here," Mercer murmured softly, her eyes fixed on the lapping waters at the edge of the shore. She was readied, displayed. Catherine Walsh, a renowned real estate agent known for her expertise in selling upscale properties, led a private life in an affluent neighborhood devoid of family and marked by ambition. Her sudden disappearance, reported by her concerned assistant when she failed to attend a crucial showing for wealthy clients, sent ripples of unease through her tight-knit circle. As investigators delved into Walsh's immaculate modernist abode, a sense of unease settled upon them. Every corner bore the stamp of perfection, from the meticulously arranged designer furniture to the pristine surfaces devoid of even a speck of dust. In the depths of her closet, a single anomaly caught their attention, a slightly ajar drawer revealing a leather-bound journal. The final entry within sent shivers down their spines. "He's watching again. Same car, different plates." A digital trail illuminated Walsh's world, exposing a series of cryptic emails from unknown senders, all bearing the unsettling message, "I see your perfection," dispatched at precise intervals on various days. Her online searches hinted at a growing sense of unease as she sought out home security systems and self-defense mechanisms. Mercer pieced together these fragments, forging a connection between the meticulous arrangement of the victim's body and the disturbing messages. This was not a crime of passion, but a chillingly orchestrated ritual. A breakthrough emerged from an unexpected source. A local pawn shop owner recognized Walsh's distinctive emerald necklace among his wares, absent from her personal effects. The trail led to Michael Linden, a nondescript maintenance worker with a penchant for vanishing into the background. Surveillance footage unveiled his repeated visits to Walsh's residence, sometimes with his maintenance cart in tow, other times slipping in unnoticed. A search of his humble dwelling unearthed a trove of unsettling discoveries, walls adorned with surreptitiously captured images of Walsh and other women, eerily similar in appearance, with some hauntingly marked in red. Behind a concealed panel in his closet lay a shrine of sorts, each item meticulously curated to capture a fragment of the victim's essence: a strand of hair, a discarded tissue stained with lipstick, keys, and receipts. Each collection was accompanied by a meticulous notebook chronicling their daily routines, preferences, and quirks. The interrogation room turned frigid as Linden was brought in, his demeanor calm and collected, belying the horrors he had wrought. "They were flawed," he intoned softly, his voice devoid of emotion. "They presented a facade of flawlessness, but I saw the truth. Catherine's desk drawer was always in disarray. She missed a spot when applying her lipstick. Her perfection was a facade." The search for the two missing victims hinted at in his note led the authorities to desolate locations where two more suitcases were retrieved, each bearing the signature of Linden's twisted artistry. During the trial, Linden sat stoically, his gaze unfaltering as the prosecution unraveled his meticulous methods. Months of stalking, intruding into the lives of his victims, and ultimately correcting what he perceived as imperfections before extinguishing their lives. The families of the fallen watched in silent sorrow as the judge pronounced a sentence of life without parole for Lyndon, a sentence befitting the depths of his depravity. For Detective Mercer, the case reached its formal conclusion, yet haunting questions lingered in the wake of the tragedy. What unseen flaw within Lyndon drove his obsession with these particular women? What shadowed reflection of himself compelled him to seek out and destroy perceived imperfections in others? As the river carried on its tranquil journey downstream, its waters gradually erasing all traces of the grim tale, a silent reminder remained on Mercer's desk, the chilling notebooks, a testament to the darkness that can fester beneath the veneer of normalcy. In the ordinary lives that surround us, in the unassuming figures that pass us by, lurks a chilling truth that sometimes the most perilous predators are those who move unseen, waiting for a single flaw to reveal itself, a flaw they believe justifies their monstrous deeds. Story 19: The Midnight Calf. The quaint coffee shop had become his sanctuary, a place of solace amidst the chaos of the world. For years he followed the same routine, same table in the corner, same order of black coffee without sugar, same silent contemplation. The barista recognized his face, his presence a familiar part of the shop's daily rhythm, yet no one knew his name. He was a ghost, a mystery lingering in the air like the scent of freshly brewed coffee. Then one day he didn't show up. The usual buzz of the morning rush felt different, empty without his quiet presence. Concerned, the staff called the police. When they checked his regular seat, all that remained was a wallet left behind. Inside, a driver's license with a photo, but no name, no address, just a blank void where his identity should have been. Detective Sarah Mercer delved into the enigma, her fingertips tracing the cold metal table as she scrutinized the security footage. The man, now known only as John Doe, appeared ordinary on camera, unassuming, blending effortlessly into the background. His disappearance defied logic, sending shivers down Mercer's spine. The footage replayed his entrance, his familiar routine playing out like a haunting melody. John entered, ordered his coffee, and settled at his table, lost in thought as he scribbled in a worn notebook. Then, the moment of vanishing, he stood, walked towards the restroom, and simply ceased to exist, a phantom in the coffee shop's history. As Mercer delved deeper, the mystery only deepened. The wallet revealed no clues, just blank spaces where personal details should be. Credit cards led to nowhere, cash neatly arranged, and a lone business card with a cryptic number. A call yielded only silence, the sound of pages turning echoing in the receiver. The barista's recollections painted a portrait of a solitary figure, always alone, always engrossed in his writing. The notebook, filled with cryptic symbols and sketches of unknown buildings, baffled even the most seasoned cryptographers. Mercer's investigation uncovered no leads, no trace of John Doe beyond the coffee shop's walls. A peculiar detail caught Mercer's attention, the flicker of the time stamp each morning, a subtle anomaly that hinted at something beyond comprehension. Returning to the coffee shop, she noticed a mirror hanging between the entrance and the restroom hallway, its ornate symbols mirroring those in John's notebook. Behind the mirror, a hidden chamber revealed a trove of identical wallets, each with a blank identity. A journal chronicling decades of experiments in temporal manipulation hinted at a reality far stranger than Mercer could have imagined. The mirror, the gateway between worlds, held the key to John Doe's enigmatic existence. As bizarre occurrences plagued the coffee shop, Mercer's investigation led her to Margaret Keller, a former physicist with knowledge of parallel realities and quantum mirrors. The pieces fell into place. John Doe was Daniel Weston, a brilliant mind lost in the realms of possibility. The climax came in the dead of night as Mercer uncovered the truth in the shattered remains of the mirror. Two versions of Weston existing simultaneously, a rift in the fabric of reality that defied all logic. His final message warned of a closed window, a boundary between worlds that should not be crossed. The case of the man who didn't exist remained a mystery, shrouded in the shadows of the midnight cafe. The building faded into memory, its secrets buried beneath the rubble. Daniel Weston's fate remained unknown, his legacy etched in the whispers of those who dared to seek the truth. As for Detective Mercer, her resignation marked a new chapter, a journey into the unknown where reality and illusion blurred. Her porch became a haven for contemplation, her notebook a conduit for the mysteries of the universe. And in the stillness of the night, the fragment of an antique mirror whispered of a world beyond our own, a realm where dreams and nightmares intertwined. Story 20. The aged apartment held secrets within its walls, pipes that groaned, floorboards that whispered their tales. But the newest resident sensed a presence beyond the ordinary. The footsteps, distinct and deliberate, echoed from above, pacing slowly and purposefully. Yet she dwelled on the topmost floor. One evening she summoned the courage to tap the ceiling with a broomstick. The sound ceased. Silence lingered. Then a solitary knock reverberated from within the ceiling itself. Sarah Coleman chose to keep the strange incident to herself, attributing it to the settling of the building or perhaps a small creature venturing into the attic space. Despite the nightly persistence of the footsteps, she adapted, raising the volume of her television, donning headphones to muffle the rhythmic footfalls that traversed her ceiling in the shroud of darkness. Detective Morris became acquainted with the apartment through an unexpected revelation during routine maintenance. A worker stumbled upon a concealed crawlspace while tending to a water leak outside Sarah's residence. Upon removing a section of drywall, the worker uncovered a narrow passage that defied the building's architectural plans. Illuminated by a flashlight was a makeshift living area, scattered food wrappers, discarded water bottles, a soiled blanket, and a weathered notebook. The building superintendent promptly contacted the authorities. Detective Morris, accompanied by his partner Detective Rivera, arrived to find the maintenance worker visibly shaken, repeating, "Someone has dwelled within the walls, someone has watched." The notebook divulged intricate observations of Sarah Coleman, her routines, her guests, her meals, her entertainment choices, her bathing times, her slumber. The script began orderly but devolved into erratic scribbles in the final entries, embellished with peculiar symbols in the margins. The subject no longer responds to my signals, the last passage read. She has chosen to ignore me. No one ignores me. Forensic teams combed the crawl space, uncovering fingerprints absent from any database. They unearthed an intricate network of passages woven into the walls and ceilings of the building, some dating back decades according to structural analysis. These passages linked to 5 distinct apartments, terminating in covert observation points disguised as fixtures or minor imperfections, yet all routes converged at Sarah Coleman's abode. Interviews with current residents yielded no anomalies beyond the customary noises of communal living. Conversely, former tenants recounted unsettling experiences. 3 prior inhabitants of Sarah's apartment spoke of feeling scrutinized or hearing unexplained movements. One departed after a mere fortnight, their encounters unspoken out of fear of sounding paranoid. The breakthrough in the case manifested when forensics detected minuscule blood splatters in one of the crawl spaces. DNA analysis traced the blood to Martin Weaver, a former resident who had vanished mysteriously 4 years earlier. His disappearance had been filed as a missing persons case that had grown cold. Martin had resided in the apartment directly beneath Sarah's. Detective Morris revisited Martin's disappearance, learning that he had voiced complaints about disturbances from the apartment above. Confronting the occupant, an introverted man named Edward Martin had subsequently vanished, preceding Edward's swift departure without a forwarding address. Edward's rental history revealed a recurring pattern selecting top-floor units, maintaining minimal social interactions, and departing abruptly. A neighbor from Edward's third abode described him as intense and recalled his incessant demands for silence. Property records unveiled Edward's acquisition of remote rural land. Upon investigating, authorities unearthed a cabin adorned with photos and notes depictions of residents from various apartment buildings, including Sarah Coleman and Martin Weaver. Diagrams detailing ventilation systems and structural vulnerabilities, alongside journals chronicling specimen observations and habitat upkeep, adorned the walls. In the cabin's core stood a corkboard adorned with newspaper clippings, reports of missing individuals, 6 in total, all former residents of buildings where Edward had resided. Beneath the board, indelible grooves marred the floor, suggesting the repeated dragging of a weighty object. Cadaver dogs led investigators to disturbed earth behind the cabin, revealing human remains within multiple graves. As forensic anthropologists endeavored to identify the victims, Detective Morris revisited Sarah's residence. Though the crawl spaces had been sealed, residents reported sporadic sounds persisting. During the installation of enhanced security measures, maintenance personnel stumbled upon a second notebook tucked in a corner where the wall met the ceiling, a newer addition to the eerie collection. The initial page bore a solitary message. They uncovered my former refuge, but my current sanctuary remains hidden. The subsequent pages delineated a crude layout of Sarah's apartment with a newly marked passage in crimson. An ominous date for that very night loomed on the final page. Officers hastened to evacuate Sarah, yet her dwelling stood vacant. Her phone rested on the kitchen countertop. The television hummed softly. The shower ran steadily. Within the bathroom, a message materialized on the steamed mirror, etched by a spectral finger. Look up. Above the shower, the ceiling panel had been removed. The pursuit of Edward persists. Identified as Edward Mercer, a former construction specialist in renovations, his adeptness with building structures enabled the crafting of a clandestine web of observation points and passages. Thermal scans of Sarah's building unveiled no indication of current occupancy within the walls. Sarah Coleman remains absent, her case entwined with vanishing acts across multiple states. Authorities have alerted apartment complex managers regarding unauthorized modifications and concealed spaces. The haunting image that lingers with Detective Morris isn't the graves or the journals, but the unwitting individuals captured in photographs. The unfathomable dread of Sarah, ensconced in her apartment, besieged by phantom footsteps from a phantom upstairs neighbor, the echoes that ceased upon her knock and then returned. In solitude, Detective Morris often finds himself gazing upward at his ceiling, attuned to the silence, pondering who else may be listening in the shadows of the night. Story 21, The Tale of the Old Library. The aging library stood on the brink of destruction, its fate sealed by the hands of progress. The workers toiled away, their efforts nearing completion, when a serendipitous stumble led to a revelation. A hidden latch, concealed within the ancient bookshelf, was discovered by one of the laborers. With a soft click, the bookshelf swung open, unveiling a passage shrouded in mystery, a narrow corridor that beckoned the curious to explore its secrets. Upon entering, the workers found themselves in a forgotten chamber, untouched by time for decades. The air hung heavy with the weight of history, a palpable silence enveloping the space. There was no grandeur to be found within, only a solitary chair bolted to the floor at the room's center, and etched repeatedly on the walls, a haunting message lingered: "I am still here." The construction foreman, sensing the gravity of the situation, swiftly called for the authorities. What had begun as a routine demolition project now veered into the realm of the enigmatic and foreboding. Detective Morgan Walsh, a seasoned investigator with 20 years of experience, arrived on the scene to confront a puzzle unlike any he had encountered before. Standing at the threshold of the hidden room, Walsh cast his flashlight's beam into the darkness, illuminating the cryptic message that adorned the walls. "Secure the scene," he directed the officers, his voice resonating through the confined space. "No one disturbs a thing until forensics arrives." The library's history whispered tales of intrigue and tragedy. Once owned by the illustrious Harrington family, the building had been bestowed upon the public following the unexplained disappearance of their daughter, Rebecca. Vanishing during her final year of college, Rebecca left behind a void, her absence a haunting mystery that lingered in the community's collective memory. Forensic experts meticulously combed the hidden room, unearthing clues that painted a chilling picture. Hair and fibers embedded in the chair, traces of blood and skin cells mingled with the scratches on the walls, all pointing to a grim truth. A young woman had been confined within these walls, her struggle evident in the weathered leather straps that still clung to the chair. As Walsh delved deeper into the dark recesses of the Harrington family's past, a pattern began to emerge. The timing of the library's donation, mere weeks after Rebecca's disappearance, raised suspicions that could not be ignored. Further revelations unveiled a sinister connection. The very contractor who had installed the bookshelf had close ties to Maxwell Harrington, Rebecca's uncle, and a figure of authority within the family. Interviews with former library staff unveiled pieces of a macabre puzzle. Maxwell's insistence on preserving the untouched section of the building, his solitary visits to the hidden room, all painted a portrait of a man consumed by shadows. The discovery of DNA evidence linking Rebecca to the hidden room sent shockwaves through the investigation. The pieces of the puzzle aligned, revealing a harrowing truth. Rebecca had not fled, but had been imprisoned by her own kin. The search warrant for the Harrington estate yielded a damning piece of evidence, a journal detailing Maxwell's descent into obsession and madness. Confronted with the weight of his sins, Maxwell's veneer of innocence crumbled under the weight of guilt. The truth spilled from his lips, a confession tainted with remorse and regret. Rebecca's fate, sealed by his hand, was a tragedy that defied comprehension. Excavation beneath the hidden room unearthed the remains of a life cut short, a young woman robbed of her future by the one sworn to protect her. Maxwell's sentencing brought a semblance of closure, though the scars left by his actions ran deep. The library, once slated for destruction, now stood as a monument to a life lost and a truth uncovered. Community members paid tribute to Rebecca's memory, offering flowers at the entrance as a token of remembrance. In a twist of fate, it was Rebecca's voice that echoed through the walls, a message etched in desperation that ensured her presence would never fade into oblivion. As the dust settled and the shadows receded, justice prevailed, a beacon of light piercing through the darkness that had long shrouded the old library. And in the stillness of the night, as the world drifted into slumber, the echoes of a forgotten soul whispered softly, "I am still here." Story 22. She entered the old house through the creaking front door, disturbing the stagnant air filled with dancing dust particles. The abandoned Victorian stood frozen in time, its peeling walls and draped furniture telling tales of neglect. Yet amidst the eerie stillness there was a peculiar mystery that set it apart. Every door she opened led her back to the same room, the parlor. A chilling realization dawned on her as she wandered the corridors, feeling like a lost soul trapped in a hauntingly familiar loop. The only escape seemed to be retracing her steps, but when she turned to leave, the front door had vanished into thin air, leaving her stranded in this enigmatic labyrinth. The discovery of Morgan Pierce's lifeless body within the walls of the Victorian transformed the once abandoned abode into a grim crime scene. Detective Sarah Lynn stood at the threshold, observing the somber procession of forensic technicians moving silently through the dimly lit interior like phantoms. The house had garnered a dark reputation among the locals, an ominous place where compasses spun aimlessly and whispers of unseen watchers lingered in the shadows. Now it held secrets far more sinister than mere urban legends. The initial examination suggests she passed about 3 days ago, the medical examiner murmured, his words barely audible in the heavy silence. The cause of death appears to be asphyxiation. Morgan's lifeless form had been discovered in the parlor, seated in an antique chair, her serene expression suggesting she awaited someone's arrival. No signs of struggle marred her peaceful demeanor, no hint of a fight for survival. The scene exuded a haunting tranquility that sent shivers down the spines of seasoned investigators. "Who stumbled upon the body?" Lind inquired, flipping through her notes with furrowed brows. "A real estate agent showing the property to potential buyers," her partner responded. "They stumbled upon her seated there, mistaking her for a trespasser until they drew closer." The Victorian had remained uninhabited since the passing of its previous owner, Eleanor Blackwood, nearly half a decade ago. Legal disputes had left the property in a state of abandonment, unwanted, unsold, and largely forgotten, except by those drawn to its eerie allure. Morgan Pierce, a 26-year-old graduate student delving into architectural anomalies for her thesis, had a penchant for meticulous research and a fascination with spaces that defied conventional norms. The allure of the abandoned Victorian, infamous for disorienting its visitors, had undoubtedly beckoned to her curious spirit. Her roommate reported her missing 2 days prior, Lind noted pensively. Morgan mentioned visiting the house where people get lost for her research. As the investigation unfolded, a trail of breadcrumbs led to Morgan's repeated visits to the enigmatic house in the weeks leading to her demise. Her journal entries chronicled bizarre acoustic phenomena, chilling cold spots that defied logic, and doors that seemed to play tricks on her perception, leading to different destinations with each opening. In her final entry, she spoke of plans to document the spatial anomalies she had encountered, yet the specialized equipment she intended to use remained conspicuously absent. The autopsy yielded an unexpected revelation: traces of a rare alkaloid in Morgan's system, derived from a plant associated with shamanic rituals. While the substance was known to induce disorientation and vivid hallucinations, the quantities found were insufficient to prove lethal intent. She wasn't one to dabble in recreational substances, her boyfriend adamantly defended during interrogation. Morgan was meticulous in her methods. She wouldn't have jeopardized her research through recklessness. Digital sleuthing uncovered fragments of deleted messages on Morgan's phone, exchanges with a kindred spirit who shared her fascination with the enigmatic house, someone who professed to hold insights into its mysteries. The tone of their correspondence shifted from professional to intimate, veiled in cryptic allusions and shared secrets. The house retains the echoes of its past, read one enigmatic message. It yearns for someone to unveil its truths. The investigation honed in on Adam Reeves, an architectural historian whose expertise in rare spatial phenomena had captivated Morgan's attention. Their professional rapport had blossomed into a more personal connection, sparking a shared quest to unravel the enigma shrouding the Victorians' corridors. When questioned, Reeves expressed genuine sorrow at Morgan's untimely demise. The house bears a legacy, he elucidated. Its original architect wove illusions and paradoxes into its design, intended to disorient and beguile. Morgan sensed a deeper layer to it, something transcending mere optical tricks. However, Reeves possessed a solid alibi for the presumed time of Morgan's passing, backed by security footage capturing him delivering a lecture at a university symposium hours away from the crime scene. A breakthrough emerged from an unexpected source, Eleanor Blackwood's grandson, residing overseas, who disclosed a long-guarded family secret concealed through generations. My grandmother wasn't the sole Blackwood to meet her end within those walls, he revealed. Others followed suit, always discovered in the parlor, always in a state of serene repose. The family termed it the claiming. He furnished investigators with journals spanning decades, chronicling deaths initially attributed to natural causes like heart failure or strokes. A pattern emerged: individuals spending prolonged periods within the house inevitably succumbed to what the family cryptically referred to as the influence. A secondary sweep of the property unveiled a concealed compartment behind the parlor fireplace, housing not only Morgan's missing equipment, but a chamber adorned with artifacts from diverse indigenous cultures, meticulously arranged in a geometric pattern. At its heart rested a weathered figurine embodying a deity linked to liminal spaces, thresholds between realms. Traces of the alkaloid found in Morgan's system coated the artifacts, hinting at a connection to her tragic demise. The case took a macabre turn as forensic analysis of dust patterns within the house hinted at a silent witness present during Morgan's final moments. Partial fingerprints, alien to Morgan or any documented visitors, adorned doorknobs throughout the labyrinthine abode. 3 weeks into the investigation, Adam Reeves was discovered lifeless in his apartment. Mirroring Morgan's fate, he sat serenely facing the entrance, the telltale alkaloid whispering of a shared demise. Clutched in his hand was a key defying identification within his living quarters, yet fitting seamlessly into the enigmatic compartment concealed within the Victorian's walls. In his parting missive, addressed to himself as if preserving a testament for posterity, Reeves inscribed, "The house doesn't ensnare your body, it ensnares your perception." Morgan saw the truth: the doors laid where they always have, but a deceptive force convinces you of endless circles. Once enlightenment dawns, departure is within reach, yet by then one hesitates to leave. The case lingered as an unsolved enigma, catalogued as suspicious fatalities under continuing scrutiny. The Victorian stood condemned, its access barricaded by official decree. However, whispers persisted of spectral lights flickering within its confines on certain moonlit nights, of visitors who vanished into its depths without a trace. Locals murmured of a malevolent sentience guarding its secrets, claiming those who delved too deeply. Others speculated that Morgan and Reeves had unearthed a primordial force, an entity straddling the thresholds between reality and the unknown. The truth remained as elusive as an escape in a house where every portal led back to the inception, a haunting reminder of the unfathomable mysteries lurking within the spaces between worlds. Story 23. The motel stood like a forgotten relic, its facade weathered and worn, a haven for transient souls seeking respite in the shadows. A place where time seemed to hold its breath, where stories whispered in the creaking floorboards and flickering lights. The receptionist, with eyes that held secrets untold, passed a tarnished key to her with a cautionary glance. Just avoid the last door on the left, his voice barely above a whisper, laden with a mysterious warning that sent shivers down her spine. That night, enveloped in the hush of the dimly lit hallway, she found herself drawn to that forbidden threshold. The brass knob chilled her fingertips as she hesitated, the wood grain of the door bearing silent witness to untold mysteries. Pressing her ear against the weathered surface, she heard it, a soft, rhythmic breath, barely audible yet undeniably present, stirring the air with a haunting presence from the other side. Detective Morgan Reed, a seeker of truths veiled in shadows, stepped into the room cloaked in dread. The stench of iron lingered, a macabre perfume that spoke of violence written in crimson ink upon the floor. Amidst the stark tableau of the room, where cleanliness clashed with chaos, a young woman lay in repose, a tragic figure frozen in time. Her lifeless gaze fixed upon the ceiling, a silent witness to the horrors that befell her in this desolate chamber. Reed knelt beside the fallen form, a silent sentinel amidst the echoes of tragedy. The forensic technician's impassive voice shattered the silence, recounting the grim details of yet another victim claimed by the same unseen hand. The motel manager, a specter of guilt and fear, lingered at the threshold, his pallor a canvas of regret. Words stumbled from his lips, a tale of solitude and sudden demise that echoed through the empty corridors. Back at the precinct, Reed pieced together the puzzle of lives cut short, each victim a thread in a tapestry of darkness, woven by a predator hidden in plain sight. As days bled into nights, the investigation unfurled like a dark flower, revealing tendrils of deceit and betrayal that led to a revelation cloaked in shadows. A name whispered in hushed tones, a letter C, that held the key to unlocking the door to a world of secrets buried beneath layers of deceit. The trail led to a man of stature and charm, a facade that crumbled under the weight of evidence that bore his guilt in silent accusation. In the interrogation room, truths spilled like blood upon the sterile walls, revealing a web of manipulation and obsession that bound the lives of unsuspecting victims to a fate sealed in shadows. The trial, a stage for justice's final act, cast a harsh light upon the perpetrator of unspeakable deeds, a man whose mask of civility crumbled to reveal the abyss that dwelled within. As the gavel fell, sealing his fate in the annals of infamy, Reed met his gaze, a fleeting moment where the void within him mirrored the darkness that lingered in her own soul. The media dubbed it the door on the left case, a tale that echoed through the corridors of time, a cautionary whisper of the monsters that lurked behind closed doors. In the stillness of the evidence locker, 3 keys lay dormant, relics of a past best left undisturbed, silent sentinels guarding the secrets that dwelled within the heart of darkness. And so Detective Reed walked the corridors of her mind, haunted by the specters of lives lost and the doors that beckoned with their siren song of mystery and dread. Story 24. In the quiet stillness of the night, a pocket dial echoed through the darkness, static whispers and muffled secrets drifting into the void. The operator nearly dismissed it as mere interference until a trembling voice sliced through the air. A woman's frantic whisper pierced the silence. "He's here." And then an eerie hush enveloped the line, swallowing the words whole. The phone number traced back to an empty house, its walls echoing with the whispers of the past, abandoned and forgotten by time. No signs of intrusion, no disturbances in the air, just an eerie stillness that lingered like a ghostly presence. Detective Morgan Reed found herself drawn into the mystery, her curiosity piqued by the cryptic message that seemed to defy logic. The house, once belonging to the Sullivan family, stood as a silent witness to a tragedy long gone. The whispers of the past intertwined with the present, weaving a tapestry of intrigue that beckoned her closer. As she stood in the dust-covered kitchen, the phone lay innocently on the counter, its screen glowing with an otherworldly light. The call had been placed just moments ago, yet the house bore no signs of life. It was as if time itself had frozen within those walls, preserving a moment of fear and desperation. Playing back the recording for the 5th time, Morgan was struck by the haunting quality of the whispered words. They lingered in the air, a spectral echo of a voice long gone. The pieces of the puzzle refused to fit together, leaving her grasping at shadows in the dark. A background check on the number led to a dead end registered to Catherine Sullivan, the daughter who had perished in a tragic accident years before. The pieces of the puzzle seemed to defy logic, painting a portrait of a mystery that refused to be solved. The forensic team scoured the house for clues, their efforts yielding nothing but a sense of unease that lingered in the air. No fingerprints, no footprints, just the lingering presence of a ghostly call that defied explanation. The recording, those 11 seconds of static and whispers, became the focal point of their investigation, a tantalizing mystery that teased at the edges of reason. Voice analysis confirmed the impossible Catherine Sullivan's voice, speaking from beyond the grave with a certainty that sent shivers down Morgan's spine. Interviewing those who had known Catherine, Morgan unearthed a trail of secrets and lies that led her deeper into the heart of darkness. Her mother's whispered confession, the journal hidden in the shadows, all pointed to a truth too horrifying to comprehend. The journal, a testament to Catherine's fear and desperation, revealed a chilling reality hidden beneath the surface. The loving facade shattered, revealing a relationship tainted by control and manipulation, a darkness that lurked in the shadows. Confronting Mark, Catherine's boyfriend, brought the truth to light, a twisted tale of obsession and deceit that had led to tragedy. The buried phone, the deleted texts, the pieces of a puzzle that fit together in a macabre mosaic of horror. As the pieces fell into place, a chilling truth emerged: Mark's twisted game of deception, his desire to silence Catherine's voice forever. The ghostly call, the phantom whispers, all part of a dark tapestry woven by a man consumed by his own demons. The trial that followed was a testament to Catherine's resilience, her voice echoing through the halls of justice as Mark's guilt was laid bare. The phone from the abandoned house, a silent witness to the horrors that had unfolded within its walls, now sat in the evidence locker, a reminder of the darkness that lurked in the shadows. And so, as the night fell once more, the echoes of Catherine's voice lingered in the air, a reminder that even in the darkest of nights, the truth will always find a way to be heard. The phone may be silent now, its battery removed long ago, but the story it told would never be forgotten, a tale of courage, of justice, and of a voice that refused to be silenced. Story 25. In a hushed bathroom, she gently wiped away the mist clinging to the mirror, her gaze meeting her own reflection. At first glance, everything seemed normal, her face, her attire, all familiar. Yet a subtle disquiet began to stir within her as she continued to peer into the glass. A fleeting movement caught in the corner of her eye, a flicker of something unfamiliar. Turning away, she expected her reflection to follow suit, but it remained motionless, steadfastly watching her. Thus began the enigma of Rebecca Thorne, sparked by that eerie moment in her bathroom, a moment that would puzzle investigators and cast a shadow over the community for years to come. Residing in a modest apartment nestled within a tranquil suburban enclave, Rebecca led a solitary existence. Known to her acquaintances as methodical and withdrawn, she maintained a polite distance while engaging amicably with her neighbors. Her occupation as a data analyst for a mid-sized firm dictated a life governed by routine and precision, devoid of any hint that she would become enmeshed in one of the decade's most bewildering criminal inquiries. The unraveling commenced subtly. Small items within Rebecca's abode began to shift inexplicably, no thefts, only rearrangements. A coffee mug relocated, books shuffled, her toothbrush displaced. Initially brushing off these anomalies as mere lapses, attributing them to prolonged hours spent scrutinizing spreadsheets under harsh fluorescent glares, Rebecca paid them little heed. It wasn't until weeks of such disturbances had passed that she reluctantly reached out to the authorities, prompting Detective Marion Shaw's involvement. The initial evaluation yielded no tangible evidence of criminal activity, leading to considerations of mental health services over legal intervention. Shaw, upon reviewing Rebecca's concerns, noted the absence of concrete proof, no signs of break-ins, no missing belongings, only a pervasive sense of unease clinging to the woman's dwelling. The turning point arrived with the unsettling incident involving the bathroom mirror, recounted vividly by Rebecca during her subsequent interaction with law enforcement. She detailed how her reflection appeared to move independently, how an unseen gaze bore down on her even in solitude. This time she brought forth compelling evidence, a self-installed security camera fixed on her front door. The footage captured a chilling revelation that sent shivers down the spines of seasoned officers. It depicted Rebecca departing for work in the morning, followed 20 minutes later by an identical figure using a key to enter her residence. Forensic scrutiny of the video detected no signs of tampering or digital manipulation. The intruder mirrored Rebecca's movements, attire, even carrying her distinctive leather bag. However, simultaneous time-stamped records from her workplace security system confirmed Rebecca's presence at her office across town. "We're facing a doppelganger scenario," Detective Shaw disclosed to her superiors. A meticulous imitator of Ms. Thorne, mirroring her every move with uncanny precision. As the inquiry gained momentum, fingerprints throughout the apartment matched solely with Rebecca's, devoid of foreign DNA traces. Neighbors attested to witnessing nothing out of the ordinary, only Rebecca's routine comings and goings. Mrs. Keller, a neighbor, recounted a peculiar encounter when Rebecca returned home one evening, receiving no response, a deviation from her usual demeanor, though not cause for immediate alarm. Rebecca commenced documenting the escalating disturbances, noting incremental alterations within her dwelling. vanishing food, unexplained computer searches, and unsettling selfies on her phone, bearing an eerie resemblance yet devoid of her recollection. In some images, her countenance appeared subtly askew, the smile too wide, the gaze too intense. "I fear my sanity slipping away," she confided to Detective Shaw during their subsequent meeting. Or perhaps someone orchestrates this illusion to convince me of such. A breakthrough emerged upon the identification of a pattern in the security footage. The doppelganger only infiltrated when Rebecca embarked on specific engagements, therapy sessions, yoga classes, Sunday morning grocery runs, predetermined activities with predictable durations. An individual well acquainted with your routines, Shaw elucidated. This isn't random intrusion, it's a calculated surveillance and infiltration. A forensic psychologist posited a fixation theory suggesting an individual fixated on assuming Rebecca's identity, perhaps aiming to supplant her entirely. Such occurrences, though rare, found mention in psychological annals. The perpetrator, usually undergoing a psychological rupture, fixated on a victim embodying qualities they yearned for: stability, beauty, success, normalcy. Focus sharpened upon Lily Winters, a former colleague mentioned by Rebecca. Lily's dismissal following a descent into erratic behavior, coupled with her frequent observations of parallels between herself and Rebecca, raised suspicions. Subsequent unsettling emails sent by Lily to Rebecca hinted at an unsettling obsession. "We are akin," one message proclaimed. "At times, I embody you more than you do." A warrant secured to search Lily's abode unearthed a chilling tableau, transforming the investigation from disconcerting to horrifying. One chamber within Lily's dwelling masqueraded as a shrine-like replica of Rebecca's bedroom. The walls adorned with myriad photographs capturing Rebecca's movements, shopping, socializing, all clandestinely documented. A wardrobe replicated Rebecca's attire, cosmetics mirroring her preferred brands, alongside meticulous notes detailing her mannerisms, speech patterns, and daily regimen. Most chilling were the practice videos, Lily painstakingly mimicking Rebecca's gait, gestures, expressions. The evolution starkly evident from crude attempts to seamless emulation. "She aspired to become me," a subdued Rebecca whispered upon viewing the evidence. "Not merely imitate, but erase me entirely." Forensic analysts uncovered a cache of sophisticated tools for crafting key duplicates and cloning electronic access cards. Lily meticulously monitored Rebecca's whereabouts, maintaining a meticulous calendar predicting her schedule. The ultimate motives behind Lily's obsession remained elusive. Journals recovered from Lily's residence contained erratic entries vacillating between first and third person, intermittently referring to Rebecca as both me and her within a single passage. The final entry, chilling in its brevity, portended an ominous denouement. "Soon one shall prevail, the stronger entity shall endure." Upon authorities moved to apprehend Lily, they were met with an empty dwelling and abrupt exodus marked by disarray, certain technologies absent. A nationwide alert ensued as Rebecca was ushered into protective seclusion under ceaseless vigilance. For 3 weeks, every locale associated with her former life was monitored meticulously. Lily remained elusive. The investigation veered into a disquieting climax when a security guard at Rebecca's former workplace reported an anomaly, a sighting of Rebecca entering the premises despite her sanctioned leave. Surveillance footage corroborated the account, a figure mirroring Rebecca's likeness, brandishing a valid ID, proceeding to her erstwhile desk, sifting through files before departing. Meanwhile, the genuine Rebecca remained ensconced within a guarded sanctuary, incapable of being present at her former workplace. The grim reality unfurled: Lily hadn't fled. She had made her incursion, slipping seamlessly into Rebecca's existence while the true Rebecca lay concealed. The case, still unresolved, looms as a haunting enigma. Lily Winters continues to evade capture, while Rebecca Thorne forges a fresh identity in undisclosed seclusion. Detective Shaw keeps a photograph on her desk, a juxtaposition of two strikingly similar women. One, Rebecca Thorne, the other, Lily Winters. Often, she scrutinizes their visages, seeking nuances that would differentiate one from the other. The chilling verity Shaw imparts to new recruits lies not in the mere semblance of another, but in the fervor to usurp one's essence to the brink of self-erasure. Identity isn't solely our external faade, it's a treasure guarded zealously. Sometimes we grasp its worth only when threatened with its theft. Story 26, The Enigmatic Manor. The new homeowners sensed a peculiar presence in their Victorian manor, an antiquated intercom system crackling with mystery late at night. Daniel and Meredith Parker were captivated by the home's history, its modern interior a stark contrast to its weathered exterior. The intercom, a relic of the past, connected all the rooms, whispering secrets of bygone days. One fateful night, curiosity overcame the husband, and he pressed the button, unleashing a ghostly whisper that sent shivers down his spine. "Why did you come back?" the voice echoed through the static. Startled, he turned to his wife, whose eyes widened in disbelief. "I never said that," she murmured, her voice barely audible. Detective Sarah Reeves arrived at the manor in response to a call about a possible break-in, but what she found was far more enigmatic. Daniel guided her through the halls, recounting the strange events that had unfolded since they moved in. The intercom had been the catalyst, revealing a haunting tale hidden within the walls. Meredith, her hands trembling around a forgotten mug, revealed a shocking discovery, a journal belonging to Alina, the previous owner, filled with chilling entries hinting at a sinister plot. The mystery deepened as the investigation uncovered long-buried secrets beneath the property's foundation. Vincent and Alina Blackwood's tragic tale came to light, exposing a web of deceit and a heinous crime that had remained hidden for decades. Vincent's confession sent chills down Detective Reeves' spine, his calm demeanor belying the horrors he had committed in the name of silence. The trial was swift, the verdict clear. Vincent Blackwood, the mastermind behind Alina's disappearance, was held accountable for his crimes. Daniel and Meredith, unable to bear the weight of the manor's dark past, bid farewell to the house, holding a solemn memorial for Alina, the woman who had found a way to speak from beyond the grave. As the years passed, the manor changed hands, its secrets buried with the past. The intercom system, a silent witness to the tragedy, was removed, its whispers fading into memory. Detective Reeves, driving past the property, felt a lingering presence, a gentle reminder that some mysteries are meant to remain unsolved. And so the manor stood silent, its walls holding the echoes of the past, a haunting reminder of the power of voices long silenced but never forgotten. The house that answered back, a tale woven into the fabric of time, a story whispered on the winds of the night, lulling all who listened into a realm of mystery and dreams. Story 27. The apartment had sat in silence for months, its rooms holding secrets in the shadows. When the new tenants crossed its threshold, they expected only dust and perhaps a few forgotten relics of the past. Yet one door stood defiant, refusing to yield to their curiosity. It was a closet, its lock stubbornly holding tight, as if guarding something unseen. The landlord, with a nervous fidget in his demeanor, finally forced the door open, revealing a sight that sent a shiver down their spines. The walls bore witness to a silent agony, etched with deep, uneven scratches that spoke of a struggle against confinement. And in the dim corner, an old flip phone lay dormant, its screen illuminated by a single unread message that lingered in the darkness. Detective Morgan Shaw, with years of haunting scenes imprinted in her mind, felt a chill unlike any other creeping up her spine. It wasn't the presence of blood or overt violence that unnerved her, but the haunting realization of the desperate battle waged within that cramped space. "We need forensics here immediately," she instructed her partner, Officer Reed, who diligently captured the haunting marks on camera, "and fetch me the records of the previous tenants." The message on the phone, stark against the silence, whispered only 3 words: "I know what you did." The landlord, his eyes darting nervously, shared a tale of a tenant who had slipped away in the night, leaving behind unanswered questions and unpaid dues. A quiet young woman, kept to herself, left abruptly about 6 moons ago. "No trouble," he muttered, avoiding the gaze that lingered on the closet. Forensic analysis unveiled a chilling truth embedded in the scratches on the wall's traces of blood, mostly belonging to one person presumed to be the missing tenant, Emma Caldwell. Yet 2 other DNA signatures emerged. One remained a mystery in the databases, while the other belonged to a man declared deceased for 2 years, Derek Mercer, a name that sent ripples of disbelief through the investigative team. As Shaw delved deeper into Emma's life, a narrative unfolded like a fragmented puzzle of a life interrupted. Unanswered calls to her sister, a mysterious new boyfriend shrouded in secrecy, and an unknown number that had haunted her in the days leading to her vanishing act. Surveillance footage hinted at a sinister presence, a man in a baseball cap shadowing Emma's steps into the building, his identity cloaked from the prying eyes of the world. The trail led to a revelation that shattered the confines of logic. Derek Mercer, a man declared dead, had orchestrated a macabre dance of manipulation and captivity. Lynette Porter, another missing soul, emerged from the shadows of a remote property, her eyes reflecting a darkness that words could not capture. "He made me watch," Lynette whispered, her voice a hollow echo of fear. "He wanted me to see the price of defiance." As the pieces fell into place, a sinister tapestry unraveled before Shaw's eyes, journals thick with Mercer's obsession with dominance, photographs that echoed the faces of the missing women, and haunting videos that captured Emma's final moments of desperation. The hunt for Mercer spanned across borders, a man driven not by mere violence, but by a twisted desire to watch the light fade from his victim's eyes in the confines of his cruel designs. When the final hour of reckoning arrived, Mercer's demeanor remained unnervingly serene, his words laced with a chilling clarity that sent shivers down the spines of all who listened. "She sought her fate," he murmured, a twisted smile dancing on his lips as he spun his web of deception. The trial laid bare the intricate web of deceit Mercer had spun, a tapestry of lies and shadows that obscured the truth of his heinous deeds. Emma's body remained a ghostly absence, lost to the cruel confines of a closet that held her secrets within its walls. As the gavel fell, sealing Mercer's fate with a lifetime behind bars, a glint of satisfaction crossed his gaze, a silent understanding that only he held the keys to his dark kingdom. In a moment of defiance, Lynette stood tall, her words a beacon of resilience in the face of darkness. "While he rots in his cell, I'll dance in the light of freedom," she proclaimed, a testament to the strength that can emerge from the darkest of nights. The case reshaped the landscape of missing persons investigations. a stark reminder that danger often lurks in the quiet corners of seemingly ordinary lives. Detective Shaw, with a silent vow etched in her heart, kept a piece of that haunted closet mounted on her office wall, a reminder that survival isn't always measured in blood spilled, but in the quiet screams of those who fight to be